Here we are. Happy Sunday afternoon. Welcome to the Sunday show here on the line. It's the early show today, and it's the early show starting just a few minutes late. Thanks, everybody, for your patience. I'm Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels. How are you, my friend?
Hey, Matt. Doing pretty good. Just woke up.
Decided,
I got my coffee.
Yeah.
I'm like, ready. Yeah.
We've decided that today I'm going to be good cop. And, you know, none of you can possibly break me. That's not a challenge. Don't even try. Let's just, have some discussions about what you believe and why. And as a reminder, this is a call-in show. We are currently live. The number 720-619-2288. And there's also a link below so that you can make web calls from your phone or your computer through Call-In Studio and connect with us. If you're calling to defend an esoteric God notion that you can't really demonstrate, just don't. I mean, I guess it might be cool to discuss. You know what, Eric, let's throw caution to the wind.
Let's do it.
If you have a genuine belief in anything that you might call God, no matter how esoteric or obscure, I'm willing to let you call in and defend why you believe it, whether or not you think others should, and why. And then we can maybe discuss what is the impact of this God. I'd prefer, we get, Christians and Muslims and Hindus and, people with part of established religions, because let's face it, Jim Bob's esoteric version of a God that is non-interventionist, nobody's voting, or nobody but Jim Bob is voting on behalf of that God. It's not impacting us as much. But pass on the word if you're in chat right now that some people may have to refresh to actually get in. But we're doing a live call-in show and we have callers already queued up. Or we did. We lost the first caller.
Yeah, we lost Andrew.
How wild. Maybe Andrew was
I normally use an example of like fairies in the tree in my backyard when I'm talking about like unfalsifiable claims. So if for anybody who actually does think they have fairies in the tree in their backyard, doors open, come on in. We'll talk about it.
But if you think you have undetectable fairies in your backyard, then the first question is, okay, how did you detect them? Because if you've detected the undetectable, I mean, we've just basically broken down logic from the get-go. We started a few minutes late today, and I figured I'd tell you all why. It's entirely my fault. We added a new, basically set of enclosures, and we cleaned it all up and moved it up into Arden's office, but we've decided it shouldn't go there and it needs to go away. But one of the things that happened is somebody gave us a snake, knowing that we have 15 species of snakes in the house. But this is one that we hadn't actually worked with. This was a Sumatran short-tail python, or a Sumatran blood python is what they end up getting called. But as we were driving home yesterday, Arden noticed that the snake was absolutely infested with mites. And we've dealt with that before. We have all the medications here. And what we didn't have is the time and the willingness to risk having to deal with this for months in a massive collection of snakes. So when we got home, we set it up in a tub with paper towel substrate that was sprayed with basically permethrin. It's proventamite, but permethrin, covered that, and then did a kind of hand wiping down of the python with an ivermectin topical, and just left him in that tub overnight. And he's probably halfway to healed at this point, because we came up and there were mites all over the paper towels. There were mites on the table there. We kept it all out, disinfected everything. And then the person who'd given us the python came to pick him up just now. So the snake's going to be fine and healthy, and our snakes are going to be fine and healthy. We had a shot at something kind of cool, but it's just not worth it to try to take care of that snake when somebody else can.
Imagine that risk reward calculation is just not favorable. It's like, sure, you have one cool new snake that would be really nice to have, but you're putting all your other snakes at risk of getting infected or infested with those mites. Yeah, wouldn't be worth it to me either.
I will say that while I like them and I thought they were kind of cool, and I bet Arden will agree with me, I don't think we're going to end up with Sumatran short-tail pythons maybe ever.
Yeah, the really cool ones cost like $8,000, and I don't have $8,000.
Yeah. I mean, that's the nice thing. This one was a free gift, but it doesn't have any of the morphs. But it's just they're heavy and they are occasionally moderately difficult to work with, but they are very pretty. So I won't rule it out. Anyway, we are here waiting for your calls to explain what you believe and why. Yes, we will be taking calls from atheists as well. As a matter of fact, look, we're going to start with a call from another atheist. I keep clicking the wrong thing. I've had to use a different browser for my vMix. So calling in first, Scott from New York. How are you, Scott? Pronouns are he, him. You got a question for us. You're here with Eric and Matt.
Yeah, I don't really know how to quite put this. I'm just wondering if, like, before we had such an understanding of, who we are and where we came from and all that, would society have been successful without religion? Is kind of where I'm maybe narrowing it down to.
Yeah, I mean, there's three possibilities. Societies could have been less successful, more successful, or exactly as successful. Where you come down on this, Eric? How much did religion help or hurt?
I can't deny that religions had a unifying effect on certain groups of people, but usually at the detriment of other groups of people. So, if a different religion was dominant, we'd have probably a completely different landscape in the world today. So yeah, sure. I mean, religion has had some utility and kept us, certain groups of us unified under certain ideas, but whether it was required, I don't know. I don't have a time machine. I can't simulate the world to see what happens without religion. I would imagine, my guess would be, we probably would have gotten along just fine, just in a different form. I don't think it was required, or at least I haven't been shown any evidence that it was required. But I can't deny its utility. It's done stuff for us.
It's one of those things where, obviously as a communal social species, religion or something like religion is going to crop up to, unify people. I think that, you can make a list of all the good things that have been done because of, or in consistent with different religious views, and all the negative things. And I don't think there's any way to determine exactly whether we would be, how are you measuring in a more advanced society? Are we more technologically advanced than we would have been otherwise, or would we have been already colonizing other planets now? And you talk about things like the destruction of the Library of Alexandria, religious wars, all sorts of little problems there. I don't think there's any way to actually answer this question other than to say it's like saying, if there's 100 people in a room and they're all 10-year-olds, and we know that half of them are going to die before they're 40, but the way we decide which half of them are going to die is a coin toss, or we're going to go through and pick everybody that we like. Now, the coin toss thing adds a random element that might say, okay, there's no way to determine whether any particular group would have been better to survive. But we're going to go through and pick them. We might wind up picking people who are contributing more and advancing society, and we might find people who are going to shut it all down and make things. You just can't tell. You don't have a time machine. You can't rewind anything.
Right. Yeah, I didn't expect you to like have a concrete answer. I just thought of that because I think, like you all said, that there's aspects of religion that maybe like on the whole might have, helped propagate society, but I don't know. I just heard of the question myself, and I wondered what you guys would think.
Yeah,
I think. I mean, if I had the ability, like, to hit the reset button and have a world without religion, I think I would probably push it, just to kind of see what
Yeah.
happens. But also, it's like, I don't think humans would be any type like I think generally humans would be probably about the same. I mean, you're going to still have shitty people doing shitty things to each other and good people doing good things to each other. But I would rather see that than what we have now, where we have those things and we have religion as a compounding complication to everything. Because how do you religion today? We see numerous occasions and throughout history, religion compelling good people to do shitty things to others, under the impression that they are in fact doing good things. I think the soldiers during the crusade thought they were doing a good thing, even though they were, slaughtering people from a different religion and vice versa. I think we have, people, for instance, today, my old religion, Jehovah's Witnesses, we see them shunning their family members because they had the audacity to leave the religion, or they're denying their children blood transfusions because they think that's a good thing because
Yeah.
they think they're following God's word. So you have good people today doing bad things, and that's driven, I think, for the most part, by religion. So I'd rather see that removed. I'd rather see humans be who they are. I don't think humans would drastically be any better as a whole, but at least that, like I said, that compounding factor of religion will be removed, and we can get more straight to the heart
It's tough.
at, quote unquote, fixing humanity rather than dealing with this nonsense.
I think part of it was inevitable.
Right.
Yeah.
It's tough for me to picture one without, humans without religion, because that's one of the things that might, be a part of what makes humans humans. But
That's why I think it might have been inevitable, because you have you have a growing culture, or growing little pockets of cultures, and so tribalism immediately takes hold, even absent any religious or supernatural beliefs. You're going to take care of yours, you're going to take care of your family, then you work, and now you're taking care of your tribe. And as our ability, I was thinking about this yesterday, and basically I'm going to steal a good idea for myself and send it up right here. If you think about ancient people and what they knew and understand about the world and their perception, it's understandable why somebody could think there was a worldwide flood when their concept of the world was as far as you could ride a horse in a day or two. I mean, there's not a lot beyond that. You look at it right now, and for example, I know the exact limits and boundaries of my property here. They are on registry with the city. The lot is, sorted out. It exists there, and I know that. I also know the limits and boundaries of my county and my state and my nation and the continent. And I know, hey, I've never been to Indonesia, but I can tell that it's there. I know there's people there. And all of that knowledge fundamentally changes my perception of the world. My perception of the world is not me and my family and my immediate neighbors. It is now much, much more vast than that. And when you take tribalism and have it start growing in a world where people make mistakes and lie and are, just prone to making specific types of errors when answering questions, something like religion, a communal shared belief that transcends anything that we can identify, seems to me to be a normal growth out of this. And it allows different communities to thrive. Whether or not they're the ones that we would have wanted to thrive and would have been better for us, I don't know. But it's very difficult for us to look back with this sort of anachronistic perception and try to figure out what would have happened when ancient people were pretty much, hey, for the most of our existence, you were busy when the sun was up, and you were not busy when the sun was down, and you knew what you were doing on your property, and you might know something about some of your neighbors, and you might eventually get in an argument over a fence. But the very notion that there's tens or hundreds of millions of people sharing space, interacting, speaking to people on the other side of the world in, instantly, essentially. Yeah, you can't judge. I don't see any way you could judge how we're better off or worse off. I'd like to think that we're not incredibly worse off, and I'd like to think that we're not incredibly better off. That if we removed religion, perhaps a softer version of those mistakes in thinking that amplify our tribalness, maybe it would have been a softer version, but it could have also just been, just as easily been a harsher version.
And even if it could somehow be demonstrated or proven that, in fact, this was the best world possible and Christianity was somehow required for the world that we live in, that doesn't contribute at all to anything about its truth claims. It's just religion has utility. I
was just wondering. I had a good question. I'm sorry, I lost it.
No worries.
I think what's that?
I said no worries. We talked a lot, so it's okay.
No, it's fine. It's I suppose. Oh, I think I know what it is. Is there any? I don't have any. Is there any way to evolve past that fantasy type thinking that I don't know. You know what I mean? Like that kind of feeling that. I'm wondering if we can change, adapt to what we know now, and I don't know. What do you guys think of it? Like anything along those lines?
I think it's already happening. Honestly, you said evolve past. I'm guessing you mean society evolving past it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Society. Go ahead.
I was thinking like anyway, physically, societally, any way of growing past it. I don't know much about evolving and brain development and all that, but
I think I'm in agreement with Eric. It's happening.
Yeah,
religion is
because we see
decline.
Yeah, we see it already happening. We see it happening in, I think, almost universally first world countries that have high societal security, good factors such as a high education, decent wages and living conditions, high standards of living. We see religiosity trend downward in those types of societies. Mm-hmm. We see it happening right now in the United States. The United States has been kind of this anomaly because we're such a deeply divided country when it comes to things like politics and religion, mainly between generally north and south regions of the country. But we still see it here as well. We see religiosity on the decline. We see the nuns, the people who don't affiliate with religions. We see that trending upward. And that's because we have high standards of living here. We have for the most part, a relatively safe and secure society. We have good opportunities here. We have quality food and education. So we do see that happening already. And we see, on the flip side, we see, religions like Islam on the ascend in certain countries that don't have those things. So we see that inverse correlation between societal factors, positive societal factors, and religiosity. As good factors go up, religiosity tends to trend down. I think we have probably the most non-believers, perhaps percentage-wise, that we've ever seen. Yeah, and I think it's going to continue trending that direction. And then my final two things there, I think two things that really help with that, and I think Matt touched on it earlier, is one is the internet. The internet has been kryptonite to religion because no longer can religious leaders isolate groups of people and they are the sole source of a lot of information. It's a one-directional transmission of ideas and such. We now have anybody can talk to anybody in the world. I could right now, if I wanted to, go on to, I don't know, a chat program or something. I can go on to, I don't know, TikTok, or I can go on to Snapchat or whatever. I'm not too much into social media. I could talk to somebody right now in Saudi Arabia, get to know them, learn that they're a person. They have wants and desires and aspirations and insecurities, and they're just human like I am. So I think the internet's been really good on that. And the other one that I was thinking of, and I've already dropped it, my brain dropped it, but we have different things that are allowing or facilitating, the breakdown of these barriers. We're learning. Oh, that was it. Travel. We have the ability to travel wherever we want on the planet. Mark Twain said that travel. I have the quote right here. Mark Twain said that travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness, and many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. So going to another country, like I went to Japan a year and a half ago, and just seeing that, hey, and Japan's a pretty mild case, but I can go to almost any other country and go, hey, I can see that these are just people living under their specific set of circumstances, their government, their conditions and such. And while I might not agree with everything I see over there, I just see people. So, and I think that's a big thing is breaks down those barriers, makes people realize that we're not all that different. And I think all that together is probably what is pushing religiosity and superstition and stuff down like that. And I think we're a lot better off going forward because of it.
Interesting. I'm so glad you guys took my call. I really appreciate your time. Arden's awesome.
That's a fact.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, have a good night, guys.
Sweet. Thanks, Scott.
All right. Thanks, Scott.
So we got more callers we're going to get to. As a reminder, if you're a theist, if you believe something supernatural, if you have, I don't know, views that you're pretty sure we don't agree with, by all means, call in, defend them. It's maybe one of these days somebody will make a valid and sound argument. Oh crap! I was trying to dismiss the poll and I accidentally clicked on yes, and I'll call in. So now evidently I'm a theist and I have to call in. So I'm going to go ahead and queue up this call, and then I guess I'll call in and pretend to be a theist of some stripe, in the hopes
pick
that
a god, Matt.
We get some.
Pick a god, any god.
Calling in now, we've got Pip, pronouns they, them, from UK. Pip, welcome back. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing all right. Nice to speak to you again. It's been a while.
What have you got for us today?
Right. I know it's a bit of a mortal sin to discuss Christmas this early in the year, but this has been something that's been on my mind for a while, and it needs a little bit of context. Here in the UK, we do have a state religion of Christianity, and that is taught to a greater or lesser extent in schools. Although, from my personal experience growing up in the 90s, it was largely relegated to things like some mild Bible stories during assembly time, or singing some particular Christian hymns. But usually around Christmas, we all do, mostly primary and nursery school children to different extents. We do nativity plays, talking about the birth of Jesus and, no room at the inn and all that kind of thing. And because religion here is not nearly as pushy, shall we say, as something like in the US, so it's still to an extent, I am wondering how harmful these nativity plays are, because I grew up in an atheist household. I just saw these stories as stories, and never took it particularly seriously. It might differ for, Christian parents and Christian families, but, religion was never that big a deal, despite it being, part of the state and mandatory. So I was just wondering what your opinion was on things like nativity plays in schools when the culture around it is substantially different. If that made sense?
I don't know what you mean. You're like, what are your thoughts on nativity things. It's freedom of religion.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you would think it was inherently harmful or not, because I definitely think that, I generally agree that teaching religion to children when they don't have, a frame of reference as true would very well, be potentially harmful because they don't have the critical thinking skills. But I'm just thinking in terms of, is this, form of indoctrination? And even then, is it harmful considering that those
I need you to describe
sorry.
what you're talking about. Are you talking about a nativity display or a nativity performance or what?
I'm talking about a nativity play, a small stage play that is usually themed around the, nativity story, of the birth of Jesus, which, children dress up and perform.
When you say children, are we talking about schools putting on these types of plays?
I'm talking about primary school age children, and that is children who are like 5 to 11 here.
Yeah, I think it's a big problem, which is why I favor freedom of religion and separation of church and state, something you don't have there.
Yeah. I think it depends on the context of the situation. For instance, like Jack and the Beanstalk, I did that play when I was a kid in grade school. And obviously, no child thinks that Jack and the Beanstalk is a true story. So when we do a play, it's not really harmful. It's us enacting a fiction. But you can imagine if, what if my class was told Jack and the Beanstalk was a historical tale, and then we did that play? Well, now it's harmful because it's reinforcing and ingraining in us a tale that we have no good evidence to believe is true. So you can just take out the nativity and put in any other fictional tale or fanciful tale or myth, and you can then ask yourself, okay, if this was taught as actual history, how harmful would it be? And I think any story that we don't have good reason to believe taught as history would be harmful. So if the nativity scene is being performed by children, and they're not being told, or they're explicitly told, hey, we don't have good reason to believe this is good, or this actually happened, then I might be softened to it. But then you're in the boat of, okay, well, what about performances where Muhammad's splitting the moon? How would people react to that? Hey, Muhammad's splitting the moon in this play, but we don't teach it as history, but we're still doing it. You got Joseph Smith and the gold plates and the hat. Yeah. So it really comes down to the context. I think I would rather just not step in that quagmire and just say, hey, you know what? Let's just kind of keep religion out of schools. We have plenty of other factual events that we can reenact, and even other fanciful, fiction acts that we can reenact that are religion free. Why even step in that quagmire to begin with? And I think most reasons why we see this in these schools is because of religious people. They want to push those tales in school because they have the ulterior motive of teaching this to children as fact, to get religion out there and get people adopting that religion. So, but yeah, I would rather just not see it there.
Yeah. I just wanted to quickly say it's ironic that you brought up Muslim mythology, considering how much paranoia over the supposed creep of Islam there is over here. I could go into that for ages. But yeah, I generally agree. I think so long as it's kept into the context of this is a story we perform about Christmas tradition, I think that a lot of the harm would potentially come from religious families who are teaching this as true and enforcing it as true. But when it's just presented in the context of this is a story we're going to do a play about, and this is just part of a Christmas tradition, like any nativity play you might see in nativity display you might see in public, then it isn't so much of a problem. And my opinion, I think that prayers in assemblies, could be better replaced by just like a mindfulness moment. This allows, if a child wants to pray to any given god or religion, they can do. Otherwise, they can just, take a moment of calm and reflect on themselves. And this is pretty much a win-win for everybody. Like, people of any religion can so choose to, engage in prayer.
We already completely understand religious freedom. To some extent, we have it, and to some extent, you don't. But the one thing to remember is, if you're having a nativity play, and it's presented as, hey, this is just, we're just telling the story of this old myth, and nobody believes it's real, then then there's no problem there. But if people in the community already believe it, they're already teaching this, and what it does is it serves to reinforce the teaching of their beliefs. And when you get to the point where there's nobody left in the community for whom the beliefs are reinforcing, then you don't have any problem either with the play or with the elimination of the play. There's no reason to keep it, and there's no reason to object to it, just like we're not going to object to, Marvel doing another Thor movie just because there's somebody out there who thinks that Thor is real. So now,
pretty much.
you're just, it doesn't matter. Like, let's imagine you could show that there's a harm. What does that change about UK law on religion?
Yeah, I don't think right now it would change a lot, just because religion is so much background noise over here. It's so unprominent that it exists and is so much part of our culture, yet it's not taken nearly as seriously as it is in somewhere like the US.
Yeah. And I've argued before that it may be the freedom of religion and the separation of church and state that has made the United States more religious. It may be the case that if you have an official state religion, that squashes competition, and therefore the religion doesn't have to fight or compete for its place in society. It's just gifted that. And because of that, it becomes weaker and secondary, and nobody cares. This is just the default. It becomes the store brand, essentially. And so
that's pretty much it.
Whereas in some place like the United States, you have religions competing. And that's why on one street here in town, you might have the First Baptist Church, the Second Baptist Church, the Independent Baptist Church, the Pentecostal Church, the Eastern Pentecostal Church, the Catholic Church, couple different ones, a Methodist Church and a Lutheran Church, all in the span of 1.5 miles in a major city like this. And it's, the question is that having an impact? And I think that the biggest impact that diversity does is it keeps a de facto kind of status for anybody who's religious of any type. And therefore it ends up maligning secularists.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, there are definitely complicated angles to this topic, but I think we've explored the crux of my question. I thank you very much for your input. I hope there are theists who phone in for you to challenge, but otherwise, thank you very much for the conversation. I'll talk to you another time.
Cheers, Pip. Thanks.
Right. Thanks, Pip.
All right.
I never considered that before. You had a good point there about how when there is a state sanctioned religion that kind of squashes the competitive, because I mean we see that here with like our capitalistic society or financial system over here. Competition breeds innovation and it breeds ambition. Everyone wants to get on top, and they devise strategies and methods and refinements to do that. But over in the UK, where you have a state sanctioned religion, and a small startup's probably like, well, I'm never going to get bigger than this. So they're less inclined to do things like, oh, we need to, take over this potential school district over here so we can start promoting our religious beliefs and such. Like, yeah, that's kind of counterintuitive, but I can see how that would decrease religiosity, or at least aggressive religiosity, like the kind of we see over here in the United States. I like that. I like that point. I'm going to ponder that a little bit. Maybe brush up on UK law and see what they say about religion in general.
I'm watching the call screening stuff that's going on right now. We're going to get to another caller here in just a second.
All right.
But there's somebody who keeps calling in on the web client from India. I've got your IP address, and they just keep typing in racial epithets in their summary. And so now, if they ever try to call in via the web client to that by that same IP address, fucking call in studio, just refresh. It never lets me do a cut and paste. And now I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, I just saw it. All the list is shortened.
Yeah, the whole fucking list just vanishes. All right. Continuing on, we've got Andrew also calling from the UK. It's UK Day today here on the Sunday show.
Yeah.
Andrew, pronunciation, does objective morality exist? Not that I know of. And why is God so fundamentally immoral? Good questions. Welcome, Andrew. How you doing?
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I was just listening to the last caller. I listened to talk from what you said myself.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Hello? Sorry, I was
sorry, we're
the last call from the UK, and I've been jotting down notes about a few things that he said and what you said back to him.
What they said, but yes.
Yes, can I just make a few points? So I think at one point one of you said that the UK doesn't have separation of church and state, not to the extent that the US does. I'd just like to say that actually we do have separation of church and state. So most primary schools or elementary schools, as you would call them, are C of E schools, the Church of England. However, when it gets to high school, it is actually illegal to make them participate in prayer and things like that, which I know it's not in America. So I'm just going through my notes. Did you hear that?
We're not entirely familiar with UK law, but I can take your word for it.
Yeah,
you can't have complete separation of church and state while you have an official national religion. You can put limitations on it, but you guys just don't have the same level of separation of church and state that exists here.
No, I agree. We have a greater degree of separation of church and state. I mean, if you look at what's going on in Georgia,
not as a matter of law, you don't. Do you have a state religion? Because we don't.
No, I'm not saying you do. And yes, we might well have a state religion. However, you still have legislators in your country now legislating on, on religious mythology. Do you not?
Yes, but that's not. So you misunderstand religious freedom. They are allowed to legislate what their beliefs are, and if the attempt to legislate their beliefs violates the separation of church and state, the Constitution, then those laws are supposed to be overturned.
And are they?
And are they? Sometimes,
and
yes.
Are they overturned?
I'm talking about what the law is, not what people can get away with.
Okay, so if you look at what's happened in Texas, so the governor of Texas has now made it illegal to have an abortion past 6 weeks, all this, that, and the other.
Yeah,
that goes for.
It's not a religious position. That is not in any way a violation of separation of church and state. You can be opposed to abortion and have it not be religious.
Okay, so give me an argument then that's opposed to abortion and
that's
not
not my fucking job. I don't want to kill fetuses. I'm opposed to abortion. It doesn't have to be religious. That's the point. You don't get to just declare that because some position is consistent with religion, that advocating for that position is an instantiation of that religion. That is flawed logic. Stop.
Okay, so the governor of Texas then has not made that position based on his religion.
I don't give a shit. Wow, it's like you can't understand Andrew, a fucking word I'm saying. Whether the governor of Texas, shut up. Whether the governor of Texas did it because of his religion is irrelevant to whether this violates separation of church and state.
And Andrew, the governor of Texas may be religiously motivated, but can keep religious doctrine and text out of the actual lawmaking. So I can't speak to its motivations, but what really it comes down to is what does the law, proposed laws or past laws actually say?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I
It's
apologize.
funny. It's funny though that you're basically calling you were calling for something else, but now you're trying to say that you have stronger separation of church and state in a country with a state religion and blasphemy laws still on the books.
Yeah, no, I mean, all I wanted to do was make a point about the separation of church and state in the UK, but actually what I was going to ring in for was about objective morality. So if you want to talk about that, we can. So,
Well, I'm happy to talk about that, but all we said was that to the extent that we have, as a matter of law, separation of church and state, no matter how many people are trying to violate it is irrelevant to what the law is. No matter how many people disregard the law is irrelevant to what the law is. The law here favors separation of church and state, and the law where you are does not.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, here in the United States, it actually in our Constitution, here in our Constitution, it says that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, which is the polar opposite of the government saying this is our established religion. So we were talking earlier about how it counterintuitively might decrease religiosity in a country that has a state religion. But that's a lot of, kind of just like analysis and sociological study and stuff like that we just probably don't want to do here. But it could be better, could be worse. We don't know. Yeah.
No, yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah.
So, for example, can your head of state, can the king become Catholic?
Can the king? Well, I mean, if he wants to, he can. I don't really know.
No. The British sovereign is the supreme governor of the Church of England and cannot be a Roman Catholic.
That's a fair point, yeah.
And according to the Succession to the Crown Act of 2013, 11 years ago, the monarch cannot even be married to a Catholic. And you want to pretend that you have a stronger separation of church and state?
Okay, it's not that I want to say we have a stronger separation of church and state. I'm going to backtrack now. It's just that when the bloke before was talking, you said that you have a greater degree of separation of church and state. Well, my argument is that you possibly don't, because you have legislators like the governor of Texas, and you have Marjorie Taylor Greene, whatever her name is, from Georgia and everything, making laws, trying to pass bills based on their religious beliefs. Well, in the UK,
laws on abortion aren't an instantiation of religion.
Religious beliefs. That was my argument.
It's also their religious belief that it's wrong to murder. Does that mean that laws on murder are an instantiation of church-state separation violation?
Well, no, but I mean, there are definitely things that have to be done about the laws on murder, both in the UK and the US. But I'm not saying that they're all based on religious beliefs, but I'm saying that in the UK, I don't know of any law recently that's been passed. I don't know of any bill that's been pushed through Parliament that is based on a single member's religious beliefs. However, you hear it in the news every day. In America, you have laws being passed or bills being put forward based on people's religious beliefs.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
Then there needs to be a determination as to whether or not that law is consistent with the Constitution. You don't hear about this in the UK because you don't have a constitution that prohibits that. And so as long as what they're doing is advocating for C of E and positions that are consistent with that, you're not going to get into the conflict. You don't have the competition between religions. And the fact is that somebody may try to make a law based on their religious opinion, and it may not be illegal at all. You could have a position on murder. You could have a position on the death penalty. You could be opposed to the death penalty on religious grounds, and that doesn't make it a violation of church-state separation for you to try to outlaw capital punishment. It's more complicated than that.
We've seen, and Andrew, I think I'm going to mingle a quote, but I think it was JFK, one of our presidents. I think he was a Roman Catholic, and I think he's on record as saying, I'm a Roman Catholic, and I disagree with certain positions, but I have no non-religious, non-secular grounding to enforce these types of laws or to enact these types of laws because my religion is not a good reason. Now, granted, that's 50 plus years ago, and times have kind of changed with the way our politicians behave. But we have clear examples of uh, politicians saying, "Hey, I personally, religiously, I'm opposed to this, but I have no grounding to impose this on others based on just my religion." They realize, some of them do at least, that they need a secular, non-religious reasoning in order to do this. Have you ever heard of something called the lemon test? It's a United States
Sorry,
thing.
the lemon test.
Yeah. The
No.
lemon test. Yeah, you can actually look it up. It's from Lemon v. Kurtzman, one of our 1971. It's one of our cases here in the United States, and it established something called the lemon test. And the lemon test is really just a test for proposed laws to determine whether this law is in alignment with our constitutional decree that religion remains separate, that the Congress shall make no laws respecting religion.
Yeah.
To determine whether that's the case or not. And there's 3 prongs to this lemon test. And whenever a proposed law gets passed and then it's like contested by a group and it kind of bubbles up through our courts, then they decide, okay, whether this law is constitutional or not. Usually, I think, if remember correctly, it gets to the Supreme Court. If it gets up that high, it's usually subjected to the lemon test. And the lemon test just has 3 prongs, and it's that the statute must have a secular legislative purpose. That's 1. 2, the principal or primary effect of the statute must neither advance nor inhibit religion. And then 3, the statute must not result in, quote, an excessive government entanglement with religion. So not only in our Constitution do we have this, but we actually have in our courts this lemon test that we use to determine whether proposed laws violate the Constitution and get us entangled with religion or not. That's on paper. Now, you rightly point out that, yeah, our politicians might act differently. And I think we have a big problem with politicians today ignoring laws and ignoring infractions of these laws. And I think that's a whole nother issue to talk about. But on paper, we have the Constitution saying, hey, don't enact laws regarding religion. In our courts, we have tests to determine whether proposed laws are religiously motivated or not. And as far as I know, I don't think UK has things like that over there. UK has an established religion. Your monarch is head of the Church of England, and he is prohibited from doing certain things, like Matt said, marrying a Catholic. So sure, we can go back and forth all day on who's less religious, who's more religious, who's got the better system. But on paper, it seems that the United States does have more of an established separation of these things rather than the more applied, real life, practical activities going on over in the UK. But yeah, look it up. Lemon test is interesting stuff.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, like, look, I mean, I'm on the same side as you guys. I'm an atheist, and I'm against church connected. I honestly am, but I'm glad to hear that. I really am, because I mean, it's quite disconcerting every day for us in the UK, well, for me anyway, that takes an interest in politics, to wake up and hear all these things about, all these legislators in America, because, I mean, not to say, when America sneezes, the world catches a cold, that sort of thing. So it affects us all. And it is disheartening to hear these things. I mean, Roe v. Wade got overturned, and now you have the possible second coming of Donald Trump and all that. It is disheartening to hear. So I'm very glad to hear that you have procedures in place to stop these things happening. However, I'm just worried about the practicality of them. If Donald Trump gets back in, are these religious doctrines and ideologies going to be forced into place and going to be used to legislate? That's what worries me, and that's yeah.
Yeah,
I'm glad to.
We'll spend a decade.
So I'm glad to hear that.
We'll spend a decade legally challenging things and doing what we can to try to fix it.
No, yeah, that's great to hear, because it is, it is a bit disconcerting to hear these things when every day you wake up and you hear something new that Donald Trump and all the others, something stupid they said, and it's good to hear that America does have these things in place on the federal level. It is good to hear that.
Hope so. Anyway, so to answer your question, now that we've finished the sidetrack, no, I don't think objective morality exists in any meaningful sense. I think you can make objective assessments once you establish a definition for morality, but I think that definition is ultimately subjective to some extent.
Yeah, no,
I
I
think
completely agree. I mean, it's quite a powerful tool by fear to use to say, well, I mean, if the universe and everything and given the right to life is in fact random, then why do we have a duty to be moral to each other? Why do we have a duty to be good to each other? Well, what anchor does morality rest on? And yeah, that was why I wanted to talk about that.
I think questions like, is morality subjective or objective, I think is overly reductionist, because I can ask you, Andrew, I assume you own a car, an automobile, Andrew. Or if you'll get my gist even if you don't. Andrew, is your automobile made out of metal or plastic? Well, my automobile is made out of both. It depends on what part of the car you're talking about. Morality is this multifaceted thing. Morality is this multifaceted thing that has different parts to it. There's different components to it, and I like the idea that morality is a set of goals and then objective analysis of what gets you closer or further away from those goals. So the goals themselves are subjectively chosen based on my values. And then once I have that in place, I can then make objective evaluations of whether certain actions or events get me closer or further away from those goals. So saying, asking, is morality objective or subjective? Well, what part of morality are we talking about here? And I'm with Matt on that. I don't think the goals are objective. I don't think there is an objective goal to not murder. Even if there was, where would that come from? Even if a God told us that, like, where did that come from? Because it's the God's opinion or it was objective outside of that God's considerations all the time. So yeah, it's a fun topic to talk about, but yeah, I don't think there's any objectivity to those goals.
Yeah, that's a fantastic quote by Tracy Harris, who I'm sure you both know quite well. He said that, God, you either have a God that sends child rapists to earth in order to rape children, or you have a God that sits back, watches, and says what you're doing is wrong, and when you're done, I will punish you. If I were in a position to stop a child from being raped, I would. That's the difference between me and your God. And that, to me, was the sort of the pinnacle, the sort of pinnacle point at which I thought, actually, even if there is a God, even if we're all wrong and there actually is a God, that God is clearly a fundamentally amoral psychopath.
All right. Well, I think we're in pretty much alignment on that. And then, as your second part of your question here, why is God so fundamentally immoral?
Yeah.
I'm guessing you're talking about the Christian God.
Yeah, the Judeo-Christian God. Yeah.
Yeah. Fundamentally immoral. So I guess like I said, it really comes down to what goals we have. So I don't know. Like, what do you mean by fundamentally immoral? Like from the ground up, just immoral? Because I can think of good aspects of the Christian God. Doesn't mean I accept him as good as the whole, but I can still see some aspects as good according to the stories. Like, what do you mean by this?
So you can, on face value, you can find good aspects of the Christian God. You can. However, once you start to question it, and once you start to think, well, why does he have these good aspects? It's so we can all bend our knees and spend all our lives on our knees worshipping him. I mean, is that good? I mean, so if you do something good for somebody, do you do it just to be good, or do you do it so that person can spend the rest of their life, all eternity, paying you back?
Well, I'm always nervous when people try to talk about religion as if it was an intentionally manufactured thing for a purpose. I don't think that is remotely accurate or fair way to look at religions. These are stories that we told each other for various reasons, and they built up into more. And you can say, oh, well, these changes here. It's not like, when they say religion is the opiate of the masses and it's good for control. It's not like somebody said, ooh, I'm going to create this system so that I can control people. That sort of kind of top-down nefarious construction doesn't match with what we know about our history. But when you take a story that is important to people, here's an example. Just the other day, a fan site posted a picture of Snoopy from the Peanuts cartoon shaking hands with a stylized cartoon Donald Trump and announcing that they were endorsing Donald Trump. And the fans of Peanuts lost their fucking minds and were ready to riot. You're basically taking something near and dear to them and valuable and shitting on it and turning it into something that, nobody wants it to be, political endorsements and all this stuff. And so that's just a community that cherishes this old cartoon. How much more do you get when people are convinced that Snoopy died for their salvation? Now, that doesn't mean that Snoopy was created to intentionally thwart, exploitation for political purposes. But once it becomes useful for that, Snoopy can now become the emblem. Every time somebody tries to co-opt something we like to make it about politics, we can just say, hey, they're trying to Snoopy that. And now, because of both language and community, we've now changed what the cartoon was or what the comic was, because that's what we needed to do. And it doesn't mean it was intentionally built for that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Cheers. I do have a couple of theist callers here, so we're going to probably move on, Andrew, since we're not going to get any further on objective morality.
Well, thank you very much for taking my call. It's been great to talk to you both.
Yeah, cheers. Have a good day.
Hey, Andrew.
All right. We got theist callers calling in, and I'm incredibly optimistic because our first caller is DeAndre from Tennessee, who wants to make his case for creation. DeAndre, welcome. You're on with Andrew and Matt.
Hi, yeah, I'm calling from Tennessee. Yeah, so I basically just wanted to make a case, or I basically get more information from you guys about, if you don't believe in God, what is your worldview on creation, or where the original point?
Because it says here you were calling in to make a case for creation, and then right off the bat you want us to give our case being opposed to creation. But I don't know there's a lot of different creation stories. So what good would it do for me to tell you why I'm opposed to creation story 1, 2, and 3 if yours is number 7?
Well, I guess it's just because I originally believed that you don't believe it, which is why I asked, why don't you believe it, instead of making a case on why you should.
Okay, but you do realize the purpose of the show is for you guys to call in and make a case for why we should. And it would be a very boring show if for the last 20 years I just sat here and kept telling people why I don't believe things. But I don't believe creation stories because there is insufficient evidence for the creation stories. And there seems to be a perfectly acceptable physical model that explains the origin and diversity of events and material in the universe.
And what exactly is that event?
Events, every event, the formation of stars, the accretion disk from a sun that working in conjunction with the gravity that forms planets, all of the events, supernovas, black holes, these are all physical features of the universe that are the natural product based on all the evidence we have. I don't see any room for or any need for any supernatural appeals.
So the natural product of work.
Yeah. DeAndre, do you understand that we could potentially just give the answer of we have no idea what caused the existence of our universe? And that would add nothing to the God claim that you're proposing?
I can't explain the origin of the universe. Can you?
Well, I can use logical reasoning on that the fact that the universe is here, that means that it had to have been started up and created by someone. I mean,
no, you can't.
The reason why
you can't. No, you can't. Right, let's do that then. Start with the universe and explain how you can demonstrate that it must have been created by some person.
Well, for starters, if you observe the universe at its current state, you'll be able to see that it's decaying or it's winding down. So that means it had to be wound up to begin with. That's just common knowledge. You don't look at something that is...
First of all, your description of what's being wound up is not an accurate model that's consistent with science. What science has is a singularity that begins expanding, and that expanding either accelerates or slows down. But it wasn't something that was wound up.
Okay, I mean, well, the scientific model changes. I mean, if first it was the Big Bang, and then it was
Do you know why the scientific model changes?
Because they're not sure. They can't explain it.
No, we're not. No. The scientific model changes because we learn new things. And so we're constantly improving the model. But there are some things that are not going to change. And do you know what's never corrected science? Religion. And do you know what's never been demonstrated to be true? Religion. You know that no supernatural event or proposed explanation has ever been confirmed or confirmed to even be possible. So you're looking at a universe and suggesting it was wound up when that's not what science has to say about this. And you're then extrapolating to, therefore, it was wound up by a person. That's not consistent with the facts of the universe. So where is it you're getting that there must be a person responsible for the origin of the universe?
Well, I don't believe it's a person. So by definition, science can't explain the beginning of it because it's only the observation of it at its current state. So
no, that's not true.
Science is not gonna,
I mean, you're just, now you fundamentally don't understand science. So you can't say that science can't explain something just because it has to be observed. Science is all about inference. And so what we do is we extrapolate from observations from specific observations towards general things. And science doesn't make proclamations of truth. It just has the current best model. But when you say you don't think it was a person, do you think it was an intelligent agent?
I believe it was the exact thing that is outside of all of what was created. So if that means that it's
my question, DeAndre, was, do you think it was an intelligent agent? And your answer was that you think it's the same thing that is outside of whatever. Do you think it's an intelligent agent?
Yeah, of course. I mean, look at the design of what the universe is.
So when I say that you think it's a person is what I mean when I say an intelligent agent.
Okay, gotcha.
So what's the justification?
So in that case, yeah.
So we can look at the current state of the universe and we can extrapolate back to the Planck time within, a tiny fraction of a second from the instant of the beginning of the expansion. But we can't look at anything before that, and we can't look at anything outside of that. So how do you know that there's a person outside of space and time?
So it's the same way that in the way that I use, the reason I don't come on and use religious theories based off of the Bible, because I'm Christian, but that's not going to hold any weight. I like to just observe the world around you and then make inferences just like scientists do. So you wouldn't then look at a building.
No. I asked you how you can confirm that there's a person outside of space and time. Science has no path to confirm anything outside of space and time. So you don't get to say you're doing the same thing that science is doing, because you're definitely not. So how can you confirm that there's something outside of space and time?
Okay, so if space, time, and material all came into existence at the same point, then
we don't know that.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Would you look at a building and assume that it just was created on its own?
I'm going to ask you again.
Even if you weren't,
I'm going to ask you again, how can you demonstrate that there is an intelligent agent outside of space and time?
You would have, by your definition, you have to physically be there to demonstrate the proof of that.
It's not about my definition. It's about yours. How can you confirm that there's an intelligent agent outside space and time?
By the byproduct. How can you confirm that there's an intelligent agent behind your iPhone or your phone that you're on right now? It's because you're using it with the design intent.
Because there's absolutely zero evidence of iPhones arising naturally as a product of the natural world. And 100% of the evidence for the creation, invention, production of an iPhone is documented and can be confirmed to be actual humans. This is something that we can individually invest. This is something we can. Did you just say, what if it wasn't?
Yeah, what if you didn't? What if you?
So I just give you no. I just give you a robust explanation that shows the difference between your terrible analogy about a phone compared to the universe, and your answer is, what if it wasn't? That's your problem, not mine. I believe things when they're based on I believe things when they're based on good evidence. I have good evidence that an iPhone is the product of human intervention, human agency. And I asked you, and I'm going to ask you again, how can you confirm that there is an intelligent agent outside of space and time? How do you access outside space and time to investigate that claim?
Right. So by your logic is you're not able to. But
No, that was a question, DeAndre. You don't get to say right by your logic. It's a question. How can you confirm an intelligent agent outside of space and time? We're not moving on until you answer this. So don't try and dodge again.
you have to. Okay, no, that's fine. You have to look at the creation and justify that by its creation.
Okay, you don't get to call it a creation until you confirm that there's a creator. You don't get to take the entirety of existence and say, "Ooh, that's creation. There must be a creator." You have to show that it is. You have to show that there is a creation. But setting all of that aside, that is not in any way an explanation for how you know there is an intelligent agent outside space and time.
How not? If you didn't have, let me ask you this question. If you didn't have,
answer my question.
Hold on.
No, you're not. You're not going to tell me to hold. I'm going to mute you. You're not going to tell me to hold on my own show, and you're not going to continue to keep wasting time. I'm asking a very straightforward question because you are claiming that you are convinced there is a thinking agent that exists outside of space and time. And all I'm asking you is, what method do you have that allows you to confirm an intelligent agent outside space and time? You either have such a method or you don't. If you don't, it would be worth acknowledging that you don't. But if you do, all you have to do is explain to us that method by which you discerned this amazing truth so that all of the rest of us can come out of our ignorance. So for the final time, DeAndre, what method and mechanism do you have to confirm an intelligent agent that exists outside space and time?
An intelligent agent has intelligent design. And that's the only thing I can say because that's the only proof that you can have. If you're looking at an intelligent agent,
I'm going to mute you, and I'm going to ask Eric. An intelligent agent has intelligent design. Am I wrong, or is that a completely nonsensical, irrelevant statement? That has
I'm an intelligent agent.
Yeah,
I'm an intelligent agent. I can make very unintelligent things.
But in any case, it doesn't answer the question. But go ahead. I'll let you do it. I give up, and I'm not going to be successful here. So it's all
DeAndre, your inference of intelligent agent must have intelligent. I'm sorry, intelligent design must have an intelligent agent. Talking about when you look at a building, where do you think it comes from? This is the watchmaker's argument. We're very, very familiar with this, and it has a critical flaw to it. Your inference is flawed, and I'll just lay it out here, hopefully succinctly. When we look at a building, when we look at a laptop or an iPhone or whatever, we have numerous examples of these things being created by humans. I can go online right now onto YouTube and I can watch videos about humans making buildings, humans making iPhones. And we have zero examples of these things coming across or coming about by nature. I have that point of comparison, solid. Now, when you look at everything and you go, oh, I see intelligent design everywhere, my question is, give me a comparison to something that isn't intelligently designed, because you don't have that point of comparison. And that's where the watchmaker argument breaks down. So how do you justify your inference? Because to do that, you have to look at an intelligently designed thing and a not intelligently designed thing and back that up with evidence and observation. When have you done that?
So you do that every day that you are in the world. I mean, you do that
with
every day in the world.
With man-made things. DeAndre, I do that with man-made things. You're trying to do that with God-made things. So what point of comparison do you have between God-made and not God-made?
Okay, can you make a tree out of nothing? Or do you have to first have
DeAndre,
a seed?
Answer my question. DeAndre, I need you to answer my question. I have plenty of points of comparison between man-made and not man-made. I'm asking you, where's your point of comparison between God-made and not God-made?
I guess I'm not understanding your question because it's all in nature as well.
It's okay.
Are you asking me?
Go ahead. Ask me your question. Ask me the follow-up what you were just about to say there.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So are you asking me that in nature, is there proof of an intelligent design outside of man-made things?
No. So I
Okay, so yeah,
understand.
I'm not understanding.
I'll go over this one more time. Because I understand where you're coming from. I used to think like this too until I realized that there's a fatal flaw with what you're doing. Okay. When you hand wave towards a building or an iPhone or something else, you're talking about man-made versus not man-made. And we have lots of evidence to show how things are man-made and lots of evidence to show that some things are not man-made. I have that point of comparison and that batch of evidence to make those justifications. So when I do come across a brand new iPhone I've never seen before, I can rightfully and justly say, yeah, this is man-made because I have lots of examples of it. So that's man-made. You're trying to take that process and apply it to God-made things. So in your process, when have you ever made a comparison between something that's God-made and not God-made?
So I'm still confused by the question. So when you compare a man-made item, an iPhone, to a seed of a tree, the iPhone serves the purpose that the man created it for. The tree, when you plant the seed in the ground, naturally it grows from the ground. That was something that God made. We can't replicate a tree seed. We can only make.
That's where you're making that's where you're making this logical leap. You're seeing the function and utility and purpose of the stuff that we've made, and then you're imbuing non-man-made things with those things and saying, well, then a God must have done this. Who says that there has to be a purpose behind a tree?
So was it the cause of random events that a tree that naturally grows from the ground, and we can't recreate the seeds, but it can continue to make more like what? I don't understand the alternative to the byproduct of creation that it works on its own. I don't understand the alternative. If it wasn't intelligently designed, then why?
I can understand that. Because we're humans and we want explanations to things. This goes back to my comment earlier. My answer to that could be, I have no clue. And that does not add anything to your God claim. So you defeating our naturalistic positions on this does not automatically make your God a reality. But to answer your question, I think there's either naturalistic or not naturalistic processes, right? So
right.
So I think is naturalistic processes. I'm not a scientist. I can't tell you exactly what's going on there, but I see tons of naturalistic processes around me. I've never once seen a God process or a non-naturalistic process. So I infer that everything I see, not true. Do you have a God-made process you can point to?
No.
Yes, so something that you cannot replicate that is natural in the world that you live in, but you can't.
How do you know that's a God process?
You don't get to say that something that occurs naturally is God-made. You have to prove that.
Yeah.
So
just because you don't know where it came from doesn't automatically make it God-made.
Let me ask you. Let me ask you, if I can't make something, does that mean that it must be God-made?
No, but it's above.
No, don't say but. Don't say but. Don't say but. It's a yes or no question. Repeatedly here, shut up. Every time we've given an example, your thing is, can you make a tree? And now I've asked, if there's something that I can't make, does that mean it's God-made? And you rightly answered no. Which means just because I can't personally make a tree doesn't mean that the tree is made by a God. You have to demonstrate that a tree is made by a God. Can you do that?
So that's not the argument that I'm making. The argument that I'm making is,
I asked you a fucking question. Can you do that? Yes or no?
Yes.
Cool. Do it. Prove that it's something was made by God.
Okay.
It's what we've been waiting on
for
17 fucking minutes here.
Okay. So the alternative to what you're saying is, if a creator didn't make it, whatever definition you want to call that, God, if an intelligent designer did not create it, we should be seeing trees spawn out of the sky, because that's what the alternative would be.
No.
If that is not the case. If that's not the case, then what created it?
DeAndre, this is genuinely, absolutely too ridiculous for me to waste any more time on. Your fundamental misunderstanding of science, of logic, of epistemology, of demonstrations of how things can work. It's like I ask you a question, and you finally get around to acknowledging the right answer, and then you immediately present one of the most fallacious arguments that includes the very thing that you just disagreed to. You have no comprehension here. So here we go. Let's imagine there's a universe that was made by a god and a universe that was not made by a god. How do you tell the difference between those?
I don't understand what you're saying. You have
exactly.
to make
and that's why you don't have an argument, because you don't understand the basic foundational question, which is, how do I tell the difference between a universe that was made by a god and a universe that wasn't made by a god? That question is there to establish what sort of evidence we would need in order to confirm that a god made it. But you are looking at it as, well, I can't make a tree, therefore trees must have been made by God. But then you already acknowledged that the mere inability to make something doesn't mean it was made by a God. So you have rebutted your own point on multiple occasions now. So you didn't answer how you know that there's a being outside of space and time. And you didn't answer how you can tell the difference between a universe created by a God and one that isn't. You didn't answer anything about how you can confirm there is a creator. You just infer that there's a creator because you don't understand how shit works.
And no, DeAndre,
so,
DeAndre, I'm gonna put my 2 cents in on there too. DeAndre, I'm gonna put my 2 cents in there too, because you made a comment earlier about how we would, if naturalistic processes was the explanation, we would see trees spawn in the sky. That tells me that you have a fundamental misunderstanding of the natural processes that turned the energy from the Big Bang into the universe we have today. It did not just appear and it was done. Right at the Big Bang, the universe was just again? DeAndre. Because we've only had one start of our universe.
I just want to be clear on this. Why hasn't what happened again? The Big Bang?
Another Big Bang? Yeah.
How do you know it hasn't? It just hasn't happened where you can detect it. There may be multiple other universes becoming in existence from multiple Big Bangs. But because you haven't seen it, you dismiss it?
Yeah. Or DeAndre, it could be a Big Bang, Big Crunch. DeAndre, it could be one universe and we have a Big Bang, Big Crunch cycle. Like, we're talking about hypotheticals here, but in our conversation here, we need to stick with what we can demonstrate and what we can show. So the fact that you said you were talking about trees appearing, DeAndre.
No, that's not your fucking point.
Yeah, I don't think so. The fact that you said that you think trees can appear or should appear in the sky fully formed, it means you have a very fundamental misunderstanding about the naturalistic processes. What I recommend doing is put aside the religion just for a moment, go onto YouTube or go to a college class and learn about what we know from the evidence about how the universe started and how the universe became what it is today, because it is I guarantee you, it is not like what you currently think.
Let me beg the question to you.
Begging the question is a logical fallacy.
Okay, just let me ask the question.
It's fine. Just ask the question.
If I make a statement saying this tree was not intelligently designed, what would the alternative of that be? And how can you prove that that tree was not intentionally designed or intelligently designed?
If you say a tree is not intelligently designed, you have made a statement that you need to prove. Prove that it wasn't intelligently designed. I'm not saying it wasn't intelligently designed. You're saying it was intelligently designed, and you're refusing to prove it.
So I don't understand what you're saying, because you're saying what I'm saying is true, but you don't you don't have any proof of it. You can't observe that the tree was intelligently designed. If you break
DeAndre, listen very carefully. Did I say the tree was not intelligently designed?
No, but what are you saying?
No, I didn't. Question. So why are you accusing me of saying shit I didn't say?
I'm not. I'm asking you what is the alternative.
Yes, you are.
That's why
you're accusing me.
My point.
You're accusing me of saying shit I didn't say. Why are you doing that?
Okay, I want you to understand the point of why I said that.
No, I want you to answer my motherfucking question. Why are you accusing me of saying shit I didn't say?
Okay, I'm not accusing you of saying stuff you didn't say.
Yes, you are. Why did you accuse me of saying shit I didn't say? Would you stop lying and answer my question?
What did I accuse you of?
You
saying the tree was
accused
not
me.
intelligently
You
designed?
accused. Yes.
Okay, well, if that's what came out of my mouth, I apologize because that was not my
Cool.
point.
Now, how do you prove
But
that something is designed?
so you have to do a scientific study of the design of the exact thing that you're looking at. You would
Cool.
break down the
And you've done that
you'd
for the
break
universe,
down.
and you've done that for the universe and scientifically concluded that a God created it, right?
I can do that at a smaller scale.
I don't
Things that
need
I
it at a
cannot
smaller
replicate with
scale.
my.
I need you to do the thing that you said you could do. We've now wasted a monumental amount of time on this call for you to dance around and avoid it. It says here, DeAndre wants to make his case for creation.
So if you can prove the case of a tree that you cannot replicate,
No, DeAndre.
you say
no, you don't address anything at all about what Erika can prove, what I can prove, what anything else. It says you want to make your
statement of proof.
Stop. It is you're calling in to say that you want to make your case for creation. Here is your last chance. Make a valid and sound, evidence-supported argument for creation.
Okay, creation is the byproduct of an intelligent designer, which is why I keep bringing up things that are byproducts of design. Humans, trees, things that are created for intent, which would it pretty much wrap up the entire universe.
DeAndre, prove that trees are the result of an intelligent designer.
They serve the purpose of what they were created for.
No,
is that not
DeAndre,
the definition?
Prove that trees are the result of an intelligent designer.
They grow on their own from the ground itself.
DeAndre, are things that grow on their own from the ground the result of an intelligent designer?
Yeah. Have you ever placed a seed in the ground?
DeAndre, that was a yes or no question. How do you know that something that grows from the ground is the product of an intelligent designer?
Because the intention is for it to grow, so it does that.
You don't know what the intention is. You haven't established any intention. Yeah. Science doesn't consider intention. What the fuck is your proof that a tree is the byproduct of an intelligent designer?
I don't know if there's any other way to word it. If it does what it's supposed to do, then that's the proof. It's not about wording.
It's about the fact that you have no way to demonstrate that a tree is the result of an intelligent designer. Period. None.
Yeah. Which is why I asked the point. What is the alternative to that theory then? Was it a random event?
DeAndre, the alternative we addressed at the beginning. Things either occur naturally or not naturally. Do trees occur naturally?
Yes, they do.
Cool. But you're claiming that trees are the result of an intelligent designer, and you think that that intelligent designer is not natural. So you think that trees, which occur naturally, are the result of an intelligent designer that you can't demonstrate because it doesn't exist or because it's outside of space and time, and you don't have any way to demonstrate things outside of space and time. What reason do you have? What reason do you have to conclude that a tree is a result of an intelligent designer?
Because again, the way that we observe nature, we can see those things happening, but you cannot replicate those things.
Okay, I'm going to mute you before I start screaming. Let me make this really clear. Does the fact that I can't create a tree mean that it was intelligently designed? No, it doesn't. So why do you keep saying it does?
Am I still on mute?
No. Why do you keep saying, why is it that you acknowledge that the mere fact that something grows on its own and can't be made by humans does not prove that it was made by an intelligent designer? And then when I ask you how you can prove it's by an intelligent designer, do you give me that exact example? It's like saying, hey, if I have $50 in my wallet, does that prove I'm a millionaire? And you say, no. And then I say, okay, cool. How do you prove I'm a millionaire? And you're like, you've got $50 in your wallet. That's how stupid your argument is right now. Do you see that?
Yeah, but no, if you had $1 million
No, there's
in
not a
your
yeah,
wallet, then
but.
you'd be a
There's
millionaire.
not a yeah, but, DeAndre. It's a bad fucking argument. Do you have anything else that can demonstrate that a tree is the result of an intelligent designer?
So, just to
That's
make
a yes or
sure,
no question. That's a yes or no question. And you are only getting, okay, cool. What else have you got that demonstrates that a tree is a result of an intelligent designer? And if I have to ask this again, I will just hang up. I'm tired of fucking pulling teeth for 28 minutes to get to the very thing that you said you called in to demonstrate from the fucking beginning. So demonstrate that trees are the result of an intelligent designer. Go.
Well, forget trees. Let's move on to something that's even
No,
more intelligent.
motherfucker. Go with the trees that we've been talking about.
Okay. Well, trees are a byproduct of constant cycle. You can plant a tree and it can grow, then it can grow more trees from the exact nature
There's no
of its
intelligent
design.
in this call. Goodbye. I can't.
I saw a few. So DeAndre, there's a few things we hit here. Yeah, there's a few things we hit here that I think I mentioned. One of them is that you need a better fundamental understanding of what science says about how our universe began, because I think you have this stereotypical Christian simplified fairy tale version of it in your head, and I recommend you go and learn about that before you attempt to criticize it. Earlier, we reject the claim that a God created trees. That doesn't mean we automatically accept the position that God does not, or that no God did these things. We don't have enough evidence to make that determination, but we can assign confidence levels to whether a God did it or didn't do it. And my confidence levels is on the side that a God didn't do it, but I don't absolutely say that. So that's the first thing. Secondly, when we were asking you about how do you know whether a tree was created by God, and you started talking about the tree's purpose, how the tree grows and creates oxygen and all that kind of stuff, John, you are imbuing your own purpose on those things. Trees also fall over and kill people. Is that a part of the purpose of the tree? Like, trees fuel forest fires, which kill tons of animals and people. Is that the purpose of a tree? Like, why are you looking at just the sweet, fluffy things and saying, oh, this is God's purpose for these things? And then you're completely ignoring all of the other stuff there. And besides, like I said, that's you imbuing your purpose onto it. That's not any closer to a God did it. And the third thing I'll say before, yeah, there's no purpose for a tree. And from the very beginning, yeah, from the very beginning, I mentioned this, I think, twice. You can attack naturalism all you want. You can attack a certain natural process as the explanation all you want. That does not help you with your position unless you're trying to attack one side of a true dichotomy, which you weren't establishing a true dichotomy there. You weren't talking about, well, it's naturalism versus not naturalism, and somehow not naturalism requires a God. Like, you didn't establish any of that. You could sit here and completely defeat the scientific explanations for how the universe began right now, and it would not help your God case one bit, because there are other explanations, potential explanations, that could also be the cause and the explanation for it. So you're just kind of at a multi-level here. You need to kind of refine what you're thinking and think about all these things. Go back, listen to that call again, get away from the emotions of the conversation and stuff. Listen to us and try to internalize what we're saying to you, because there's multiple problems here. And I enjoy talking to you. I think you're sincere. I think you're level-headed. I just think that you have some problems with your logic in here, and you need to check that out and fix those things before you try this again. But appreciate the call. Thank you.
There's basic questions about, okay, you believe X is the case. How would you demonstrate that? If you don't have an answer, we're done. Let's try this. Billy's calling in from Texas. Pronouns are he, him, to say trees do not occur naturally. Billy, are you just calling in to try to troll me for harder?
No, I'm not.
So when I go out in my front yard and I grab an acorn, well, don't even have to grab it. When an acorn falls from the tree and turns into another tree, that's not a tree occurring naturally?
No, it's not. That is a product of the genome which has never been demonstrated to be natural. As soon as science can demonstrate that.
Billy.
What? Yes.
We don't have to demonstrate that something is natural. It's demonstrably part of the natural world. You're confusing whether or not it is natural in the world with whether or not it is natural in origin. And so if you claim that the genome is not natural or has something more than natural to it, you have to demonstrate that. But even if you did, the genome allows for the natural propagation of life.
I didn't say that it wasn't. I didn't say that it was not natural.
You said the genome has never been. You said the genome has never been demonstrated to be natural, and my point is, it's
correct.
never been demonstrated. It's never been demonstrated to be anything other than natural, has it?
No, it's never been demonstrated to be natural at all.
No, Billy. I'm saying
the genome.
I'm saying, Billy, is the genome part of the natural world?
It's comprised
Billy?
of natural.
Is the genome part of the? Does the genome exist as part of the natural world? Yes or fucking no?
The genome is a real thing. Yes.
Does the genome exist as part of the natural fucking world? Yes or no?
No, it does. No, it doesn't.
Are so. Goodbye, Billy. Goodbye, Billy.
Okay, bye.
Goodbye.
You're wrong. Just know that you're wrong.
Billy. Goodbye, Billy.
Goodbye. 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 Goodbye.
How do you demonstrate that the genome is not part of the natural world?
I don't have to. You have.
Yes,
to.
You do.
That's a negative.
You just asserted.
I don't have to prove
you
a
just
negative.
Asserted. Okay, I'm going to mute you. You just asserted
Billy.
that it's never been demonstrated that it's and you also claimed it's not even a part of the natural world. So I need you to explain what's part of the natural world, what's not, and how do you tell?
The code, the genome is a code.
No, that's not what I asked, Billy. Billy, listen. Okay, I'm going to mute you again, Billy, and you need to listen. You need to listen a little more carefully. I need you to explain, and you can pick two things. Name one thing that is part of the natural world and one thing that is not part of the natural world, and how you can tell which one is which. That's what we need. Go ahead.
A rock is part of the natural world. A planet is part of the natural world. A star is part of the natural world. A car is not part of the natural world. A ketamine molecule is not part of the natural world. Matter of fact, the large quasar group, that is a supernatural object. The Codex Gigas is a supernatural object. The way you can tell is because nature's not capable of generating these things. That's how we can tell.
Nature isn't capable of producing those things.
That is correct.
How do you demonstrate that nature? Stop. How do you demonstrate that nature can't produce a tree?
Through simulated models.
Okay. Goodbye, Billy.
Goodbye.
Could there be simulations we have not yet run?
I'm going to try and clean up the queue a little bit here.
Yeah, no worries.
John is also calling in from Texas. Oh, sorry.
All right. No, it's okay. Don't worry. It's probably better we don't.
I'm just trying to clear this up real quick because John is calling in to argue about something that he says I got wrong. What did I get wrong, John?
Greetings. So yes, I came to before I tell you the exact reason as to what.
No, John. John, I asked a question, which was, what did I get wrong?
In the past, I need to ask 3 questions beforehand.
No, John. Okay, let me mute you, and let me take a pause here. I'm in charge of this show. You called in to say that I was wrong about something. I asked you at the start of the call, what did I get wrong? You're either going to answer that question or I'm going to hang up. I don't need you to ask me questions. I don't need to have a separate discussion. What is it that you think I got wrong?
So 3 years back, around
I don't need to know the
20th,
date. What is it that you think I got wrong?
male reproduction rights.
Sorry, what?
Male reproduction rights.
Male reproductive rights.
Yes.
Okay. I don't give a shit what your opinion is on it or whether or not you think I got it wrong. It's a waste of time for me to have any more conversations about this on the Sunday show. Thanks for calling, John. Goodbye. You can call in on Wednesday and maybe I'll take that call, but it has absolutely nothing to do with the Sunday show. That's why I was trying to clear that out so we can get some more theists in. And Eric, if you want, we can go on to another theist. I can't see Eric and the calls at the same time, which is part of the problem.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, theist caller sounds good.
Sweet. So Kyland is here calling in. He's calling in because he keeps coming back to his God belief. Hey, Kyland, you're on with Eric and Matt. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm all right.
Awesome. Good. Yeah. So thanks for taking my call. Yeah. I would say I'm a theist. I've been kind of drifting away from religion. I keep kind of coming back to a belief in God, I guess, because of my own personal experiences, which, I don't know how compelling that would be, but for me, that's just been something that's kind of been keeping me kind of tethered to it. And I kind of come at it from a perspective of music. So I'm actually a professional musician that plays like gospel music among other genres. And I've kind of done my own things too. And I've had like very specific experiences of like when playing gospel music, and it's kind of inconsistent and random, but like I get these sort of senses of like euphoria and surrealism that I don't really get when doing anything else. And it kind of just feels like there's a sort of emotional rush of like, that I'm not alone, that there's like a loving, supernatural kind of being. And I've had that happen again, like kind of randomly, but always with a particular genre of music, always with a particular style and not in other, sort of arenas. So that's always kind of kept me like thinking like, there's definitely something else, even if I might reject like a particular religion or dogma around it. So that's kind of what I wanted to bring up and talk about.
Were you born and raised into a religion, Galen?
Yes, I was born. I was raised a Baptist and grew up Christian, and that's kind of been.
Is that the one where the music resonates with you the most?
I would say so. Not necessarily.
Imagine that.
A particular denomination. Yeah, not a particular denomination, but
but that style. So
yeah, like
a particular style of music that exploits what we. So, for example, you never feel emotion at secular music.
I do. I enjoy secular music. I play things like that all the time, but it's always a little bit different. Like I do feel like it's kind of set aside when I play gospel. And it's not like every gospel song, right? It's like it's random moments, even when I'm like alone and practicing, and I've had experiences of just being like super emotional. And
what if I played the same
connected.
chords? What if I played the same chords? Like, for example, maybe is there a hymn in particular that tends to resonate more with you?
Yes, there's a song called "He Is Exalted," but it's one of those things where I played the chord. Like when I play the chords, it doesn't tend to necessarily resonate with me. But when I hear the lyrics, and again, it's not always, but it's like at particular times, I guess, just either when I'm alone or again in like a service, it does tend to evoke that feeling. And that's not something I can necessarily.
If I change the words to "He is exalted" and sing everything the same and play everything the same, but I change the words, is it still going to feel the same way?
Maybe like "He is unsalted."
I wonder about that. I mean, I've never done that. Again, I played it with
if we took that song, let's say we took that hymn, and we converted it into a language that you don't speak, and now you're listening to that hymn, and the language is different, but the melody is the same, the chord structure is the same. Is it going to feel the same?
No, that's the same question. I don't think so.
Yeah. So music, it has an effect on people. That's one of the reasons why we end up using it. But so I remember Penn and Teller's bullshit when they were testing people who thought that they were getting messages from a Ouija board, and they did a quick and easy, brilliant thing because they blindfolded people and then had them move the Ouija board planchette around, and it could still get to like yes, no, and other stuff. And then while they were still blindfolded, they flipped the Ouija board upside down so that instead of having the letters and all that visible, it was now upside down. So yes would be no and no would be yes, but you're on a blank board. And the people that were touching the planchette didn't know that. And so it kept working like normal. And so if I took He is Exalted and just played a Spanish version for it, and you don't feel the same as you do with the English version, then that suggests there's something about the lyrics that's resonating with you. And if it turns out the Spanish version does resonate, if I then change the Spanish version subtly so that it gives the opposite message, do you think you'd be able to tell that the message had shifted in a language that you don't know? I'm going to bet that once I convert it to Spanish, whether it's the same message or the opposite message doesn't matter. And it will just be, it either resonates or it doesn't. And that's probably tied to memory and the chords and your feelings for, this particular one. But let's assume for a second that only a handful of religious songs give you that feeling. Can we at least acknowledge that there are, for every hymn that you really feel strongly about, somebody else doesn't like that hymn and prefers one you don't like and feels the same way about it?
Okay.
Or you can
how does
also
that make
imagine.
sense?
Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
How does that make sense if the feeling is there as an indicator that there's a God? If you get a feeling for one song and somebody else gets the opposite feeling from that song, and they get a good feeling from another song and you get the opposite feeling from that, how does that make sense if God is communicating with the listeners through an instantiation of the Holy Spirit or whatever, that it's not consistent?
Yeah. I guess the way I would think about that is that perhaps it's that certain songs, like different songs can speak to different people. So maybe that song speaks to me because of the chords and the melody and the lyrics, but also for somebody else, maybe they don't like the chords and the melody or whatever, but they still they might get that feeling from another song. So maybe it's more of a, for each person, whatever works.
So what's the difference there? The difference there is not, God didn't change, right? And God's desire didn't change. Like if you had everybody sitting in church and God showed up and just oozed love, a pouring of love out to the whole church, everybody would feel it and feel pretty much the same about it, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And so if that's not what happens with the music, why would you think that the music is an indication that there's a loving God when we've already established that the difference in perception about the music isn't tied to a God? It's tied to the people. That's the thing that's different.
Yeah. I did not consider that.
If
I think
God's the same, if God's the same and manifests in a church, then everybody should feel it. And if God's the same and he manifests through a particular song, everybody should feel it. And if it's manifesting for you and not for somebody else, then maybe it's not manifesting for you and it's your brain that's doing that. Your brain is taking the songs and the sounds and the meaning and the situation and the atmosphere and putting it all together into the thing that gives you goosebumps and makes your hair stand up and makes you feel elated. Because I've felt that in church with hymns and in church in silence, but I've also felt it at secular concerts, at nature parks, where I go and look at plants and animals and observe nature. I felt that same sort of elation. Is it identical? No, but I've also felt it from drugs and from sex. And while the exact quality of experience varies, there is a thread across all of it that it is similarly, there's a limited number of chemicals that are being triggered here to either give you dopamine or serotonin, various things like that. If we then try to say there's also something else going on that transcends the physical, what's the justification for that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say like maybe I don't know that it has to transcend the physical, but maybe the physical is the mechanism by which it would happen. So for those other things, like I do appreciate other types of music, and I can get a sort of similar feeling of like joy or happiness or even emotional. But again, I think for me, it's always been kind of unique, and that's kind of what stood out to me as a sort of like a question, like, well, why would this be a unique thing?
Well, it might be unique for you, but other people may get those types of euphoric rushes from other things as well. So your experiences with your music, and you're a musician, so you obviously have a much deeper understanding of music theory and everything else behind it than I ever will. But your preferences and your what lights up your brain in the right way like that is unique to you. And music might be the forefront. That might be part of the reason why you are a musician. But conversely, like, and there's, it doesn't necessarily indicate anything objective about it, external. But I'm willing to bet, Keelan, I could probably, if let's say I had you held hostage and I took your favorite song, the one that just really hits you the hardest, and I tied you to a chair and I played that song and repeat for days and days and days on end, I could probably get you to not like that song anymore. And if you were particularly stubborn, I can get really dark and I say, okay, I'm going to torture you. I want to stick, I don't know, toothpicks under your fingernails, something, while you listen to this music for days and days and days on end. And I willing to bet I can condition you out of liking that song. I could take your most beloved piece of music and I could totally make you hate it. It goes both ways. Your upbringing in the church, you probably had really good memories. I'm assuming you have good memories with your family, good experiences and such. Those songs were a part of those things. You have good memories associated with them. I have good memories associated with certain pieces of music that some people would find absurd. I love listening to remixes, piano renditions, string quartets of old video game music. There's a YouTube video. It's a not Video Games Live. I think it was called, I can't remember the exact name, but man, they had a Mega Man suite in there that brought me to tears when I first heard it, because it's just hitting me in the nostalgia, right in the nostalgia. And there's probably people out there laughing, but it's like, that's where my good memories were, growing up, listening to those things, enjoying those things with my friends, with my brother, building those good experiences. And then something out of nowhere, a remix just brings it all back. Go ahead, Nat.
There's something, and while you're on here, Kylan, I'm not good with music theory. I play some instruments, but I don't know enough music theory, and it doesn't matter how much Rick Beato or whoever I end up watching. I learn bits and pieces, but I'm not even in the ballpark of an expert on music theory at all. But we already describe, and there are things that music theorists describe where it just pisses me off, because it's like they're using bullshit concepts and labels to talk about how something feels. But it stems from this. If you play a major chord, we generally view that as happier than a minor chord.
Yeah.
There's nothing happy or sad about either of those, whether you're going, whether you flatten the third or not, there's nothing about that is intrinsically about happiness or sadness. And yet pretty much universally, irrespective of what language people are speaking, musicians across the world have generally considered major chords to be happy, bright, those kind of linguistic terms, and then minor chords to be sad. And then there are people who go through and say, oh, well, sevenths are funk and major sevenths are, romantic funk, and minor sevenths are mellow, and a ninth is about optimism. And when we start talking about stuff like that, where anything with a ninth is optimistic, I'm going to call bullshit, because there's a limit to how much crap I can imbue music with. And in reality, what if every song that had, a ninth in there at some point, was a pessimistic song? Would it still feel optimistic? And in some cases, the answer is yes. But in other cases, the reason something feels optimistic is because that's what our experience with it has been. And so there's some fuzzy language bullshit in music theory, at least from my perspective as somebody who's not the expert. The experts can come and be like, oh, Matt just doesn't get it. That's fine. But if the experts can look at these chords and describe them, diminished chords are about fear or whatever else. If that's the case, why is it remotely surprising that particular songs used in religious services make use of those things to amplify the message in the song? If you already think that something is, like if there's a suspenseful chord, and you're using that as the build up into the triumphant return, and then you get this incredibly, bright fucking inverted major chord thing that's Jesus's triumphant return. I mean, music is how you manipulate the emotions.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So you ever heard of the forbidden chord? Sorry, this
no,
tangent. There's a thing called the forbidden chord that the church in the Middle Ages apparently, I don't want to say outlawed, but they heavily discouraged the use of. It was called the tritone or the devil's interval.
Yeah.
And it's theorized that they either they banned this because it clashed so much with their idea of what proper music is. Anyway, just some little rabbit hole I went down there, but yeah, music is a powerful thing because there's a beauty and there's a mathematic behind it. There's balance, there's harmony. Unless you're a jazz fan, so it's like it's there, and it's designed by us to hit us in our emotions and such, and it can have those types of effects on us. Another thing you might want to say, and Matt might have touched on this earlier too. Imagine a Muslim feeling the same thing you feel about a song regarding Muhammad or Allah. Like, does that indicate at all that Muhammad or Allah is real and Muhammad was actually a prophet of his? And obviously we can't measure your emotional response to your songs compared to theirs, but just imagine for a moment that there is at least one Muslim out there who feels even more strongly about their songs than you do about yours. Does that at all indicate that their religion is more true than yours, or that your religion is false? So it might be a little thought experiment to think of, like, what do other people feel, and what does that indicate about what they're listening to?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it might. I think that, I mean, for me, I'm not super, I'm not going to cling on to Christianity with a death grip, because I've watched the show for quite some time, and I've kind of thought about, kind of on my own, just like some of the arguments I've heard you guys make, and I think there's a lot of compelling reasons to think that, Christianity definitely doesn't, make sense as a doctrine. But, I come back to, like, okay, in a general theistic view, sure, like I could see music being a way that we, have those sort of emotions and, a method of communication that kind of works. Because I mean, I played in church for years, and I know how to manipulate like different chords and different movements to evoke certain emotions in the service. And so even when I'm not feeling it, like I can usually produce an effect in church that doesn't necessarily affect me in that moment, but then I can go home and rehearse a song that I've played 1,000 times, and then on the 1,001th time, it hits me, and it's like, oh wow, so that's what people feel.
That's an interesting thing you just said there. So don't take this the wrong way, but you just admitted to using music to manipulate others. You took purposeful actions in the way that you played the music to maximize an emotional hit on your audience. And like I said, no malice there. I mean, that's what musicians do. I want musicians to do that. But ask yourself, who did that to you? And with what objective in mind? Was the individual playing that music back in church saying, I need these people to really believe this Baptist faith, so I'm going to really, lay it on them. Like and that's what music does. It's supposed to manipulate us emotionally. So you want to ask yourself, maybe, who did that to you, and how could that potentially be affecting your objectivity, your logic behind it? And then there's the larger question of, if there is a God, and that God's really interested in maximizing the number of people that believe in him, maximizing the number of souls saved, or whatever flavor of God you want to cling to. Why is he using music, something that is admittedly, we are all agreement here, emotional, subjective, can be used to manipulate individuals? Why is he doing that when he could just give us a better handbook, or better yet, some other non-written thing that is more reliable, more permanent, less corruptible, or even not corruptible at all, completely incorruptible? I think an almighty God that wants to do, maximize number of souls saved, could potentially give us the means to do it that is completely incorruptible. Nothing Satan can do to get in the way of it. I don't see an intelligent being using music for this kind of stuff. I think there are definitely much better ways that we don't need, or that we could use. We don't use music to do that, basically.
I'm going to try something here. So in addition to music, God, I wish I could play this. I'm going to cut and paste a link into chat. Everybody just save it for later. So let's take the song He Is Exalted that you're talking about. There's a reason that it registers with you. Let me try just two quick experiments. I'm going to read the lyrics real quick. He is exalted, the King is exalted on high. I will praise him. He is exalted, forever exalted, and I will praise his name. He is the Lord, forever his truth shall reign. Heaven and earth rejoice in his holy name. He's exalted, the King is exalted on high. He's exalted, the King is on high. I will praise him. He's exalted, forever exalted, and I will praise his name. That is different from this, and apologies in advance. He is exalted. The King is exalted on high, and I will praise him. He is exalted, forever exalted, and I will praise his name. He is the Lord, forever his truth shall reign. Heaven and earth rejoice in his holy name. He is exalted, the King is exalted on high. Those are two different things. And all I did was change rhythm and intention. When you add in music, you can fundamentally make incredibly boring, pedestrian, repetitive lyrics like he's exalted, I will praise him. He's exalted, I will praise him. He's exalted, I will. There's virtually no lyrics to this. It is over and over, I will praise him forever. And so that means it's more of a feel. Now, I put a link in chat of Jorgen Dalmo, who was on The Voice Norway and did what I consider to be the most perfect cover of any song in the history of music. He does a slowed down cover of Bruce Springsteen's Dancing in the Dark that I've watched 20 times, that overwhelms me, that brought the judges to tears, that brought me to tears. Anyone watching this who does not get emotionally overwhelmed, I think you just don't really have musical appreciation. I may be wrong. I don't want to put everybody in the same bucket, but it's difficult to think of somebody who appreciates music, who can't recognize this. And yet Bruce Springsteen's original Dancing in the Dark is fun, upbeat, and I like the song, but the only thing that changed was the pacing, the melody, and this dude's insane haunting voice. Like, if it weren't a copyright thing, I would just play it. It's genuinely, like, Arden can probably tell you how many times we've watched this, and both of us just sit there and are like, how is this a thing? Like, how is this cover? I mean, granted, it's got like 15 million views on the clip that I posted. How is this cover not known by everyone? And why isn't this particular cover on everybody's most powerful song list, trumping I've never heard a religious hymn that affected me the way his cover of Dancing in the Dark does. It's amazing. That's a religion worth getting behind.
Nice.
Yeah, I have to check it out.
I think it's safe to say we all love music here. This was a fun conversation.
Yeah, like if it weren't for
Yeah, no.
YouTube and the copyright stuff, I would play it. It's
Yeah.
yeah. Everybody save the link. Go watch it when the show's over. There's no other show you need to go watch when this one's over. You can just watch the clip.
Except for After Dark.
Well, yes, but if you listen to it from when this show ends until After Dark starts, you'll be overwhelmed and ready for the final show of the evening.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Kylan, I appreciate the call. Hopefully we made some progress, but at the end of the day, if you find that you're getting drawn back into God belief because of experiencing how you feel, it's worth knowing that is potentially why those types of experiences are popular within religion, but it doesn't in any way demonstrate that the religion is true. And if the religion were true, you have to say, okay, why does God want me to feel this way during this song and somebody else to feel a different way? Or why do they feel that way? And why do I feel differently for somebody else's thing? And if in fact this were sufficient evidence to conclude that there is a God, and that's the reason that I'm feeling these emotions, if that were sufficient evidence, then the second we have sufficient evidence for a God, there's absolutely no point in that God remaining hidden. It can just show itself, because you don't have to hide. If everybody in the room can point to where the kid is hiding, it's time to stop hiding. And the problem is that every believer, when asked to point to God, points to something different. And while some of them will point to similar things, like look at the trees, there's not agreement and there's not evidence.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, well, I mean, that's definitely given me a lot to think about. I think, too, with that, like, your logic is kind of why I don't necessarily assume that the experiences that I've had, point to necessarily the Christian God or any particular, religion, but it kind of keeps pulling me back to that. And I just want to kind of talk that out. And
I'll throw out one last thing, and that is one of the kind of short-term darlings of the atheist community was Teresa McBain, who got famous for coming out at the Reason rally and stepping up on the stage and saying, "Yeah, I'm a former clergy person, and I'm now an atheist." And we embraced her, and she hung around for a while. She lied a little bit about her resume and got called out on that, but eventually she went back to religion. And you will hear theists on occasion be like, "Oh, so-and-so had a deathbed conversion," or "This philosopher over here was a famous atheist, accepted religion, late in life," or whatever else. Or, "I used to be an atheist." I have yet to meet anybody who says, "I used to be an atheist," who explains a good reason for why they're no longer an atheist. And in Teresa's case, my understanding, we only spoke briefly around the time that this happened, and then I haven't heard from her since, is that she missed both the community and the music. There's nothing about Teresa going back to her religious belief that is a valid and sound argument for God. There's nothing there that is any evidence at all. It is just, I miss this music and this community. And so it makes sense to me hearing you, Kylan, you may be kind of retaining it just because you would miss that if you were able to consciously give it up.
Yeah, definitely. I think it. Yeah, I think so.
Well, I wish you luck. I also recommend you maybe to reach out to recoveringfromreligion.org. There's plenty of people there, and they're not going to try to talk you out of your religion, but they can give you stuff to think about as well. But I appreciate the call, Kylan. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it. Wait.
Ooh. Okay.
Also, Kylan, if you have a YouTube channel or something, feel free to send it over to me or Matt. Love to listen to your stuff. We won't share it without your permission, but I would love to hear what you do, because if you're a musician, I want to hear it.
Yeah, not trying to out anybody.
Yeah. I won't share it unless you tell me that it's okay.
Well, now that we've been on for a couple hours,
and
I've I've had my my Zen completely busted, my good cop thing completely busted, where I'm yelling, "Motherfucker, answer the question." It's just it's really wild to me, and incredibly frustrating how I can sit here and patiently ask the same question over and over again and not get an answer, not get anything that approaches an answer, and then I, of course, let it get to me. Working on it, using the mute more. Um, but it's like all I want is and need is for somebody to explain to me why they're convinced and why we should be convinced. At no point, I'm happy. How many times, Eric, when we're doing these shows, is the call basically, "Hey, I'm calling in to prove God," and then it does the same thing that callers today did, which is, "Well, let me ask you this," and if you want to call in with a question for us, just tell the screener what the question is. If it's something that we've answered 100 times or 1,000 times, like, "Hey, why don't you believe in God?" You might not get through because it's pretty straightforward. I don't believe in a God because I'm not convinced that a God exists, because nobody has made a case supported by evidence that makes it sufficient to believe that a God exists. I can say that 30 different ways, and it doesn't change the fact that the default position is to not accept a claim until it's warranted. And I don't see how any of the God claims have demonstrated a warrant for accepting it.
Yeah, I think, I've seen a pattern lately of, bait and switch. You probably have seen this way longer than I have, but bait and switch topics. Caller will call in, drop a topic in there, then all of a sudden it's like, I don't want to talk about that. Let's talk about this other thing, as if they weren't convinced that they would get through the call screener with their topic. That's definitely a way to start the call off on the wrong foot. Is you basically just lied to us without even speaking to us first.
And there's
avoid that. Don't do that to us.
There's always going to be people who are trying to get in no matter what. Look, so for me, tell the call screener what you want to talk about. If the call screener puts you through, as they did with John earlier, on a topic that I don't care to engage on, we'll let you know, and we'll let the call screeners know, so that the next time somebody calls in wanting to advocate for men's rights crap, they know that at best they should maybe do this on a Wednesday, on my hang up show, and not on the Sunday show, which is ostensibly about religion, because nothing about the MRA movement or views or anything like that has anything to do with whether or not there's a God. And if it was tied to that, you'd first need to demonstrate that there is a God, which God there is, and that it has ties to this issue. So I don't even care to get into it anymore, because at the end of the day, all the MRA stuff is just, life's not fair. It's not fair that the person who has to carry the child gets to decide. I should get a say in that as well, without recognizing how that leads to undue influence. But anyway, setting that aside, we got a couple atheist callers left. We have no theist callers right now, so there's several lines open for theists. If you think you've got an actual argument for creation, something, even if it's about trees, but you can actually get further than DeAndre did with the trees are able to reproduce themselves, and you can't make a tree, therefore God. I'm optimistic that maybe there'll be something slightly stronger than that. But I have a really interesting call right here, and this person's been on hold for an hour and a half. Giovanni, an atheist from France, pronouns are he, him, who wants to make an argument for eternal life from a scientific perspective. Go for it.
Hey, Matt, how you doing?
I'm okay.
Yeah, I was thinking of the argument for eternal life, and sometimes I have trouble expressing myself because I have Parkinson's, so bear with me, please. The argument I wanted to make is that if you can grant me two simple things, like the universe extends indefinitely into the future, and that we can trust mathematics, and mathematics is successful in describing real properties of the universe. If you can grant me those things, I think I can make an argument for eternal life.
I can't grant you the first one.
The universe extends infinitely into the future?
Yeah, I mean, right now, my understanding is the universe will essentially suffer heat death, and so that's a fundamental change in what the description of the universe is. So, at some point, there wouldn't be life at all.
Okay, yeah, you're right about that. Yeah, I was thinking
No.
more of the argument where they argue if the universe is flat, it extends infinitely into the future, and if it's curved, it comes back on itself and it's not infinite. But they have they have arguments stating that if the universe is flat, that the math is going to show that it extends infinitely into the future. Am I wrong about that?
Well, the universe will continue to exist. It's just there won't be life or any ability for life. It would just be essentially a dead universe.
Once entropy is complete, like heat death of the universe occurs, literally all energy is evenly spread across it. Like in that state, you can't even transmit information from one point to another because there's no energy to do such a thing. So it could potentially be argued. I'm not a physicist, and I'm physicists are going to wring their hands at me, but I think at that point, you can almost consider the universe be the static at that point. Like time kind of stops because nothing can happen.
But what is your potential case? Because even if I granted that the universe extended indefinitely, I'm probably going to die long before the universe stops, right?
Okay.
Like, let's say probably within the next 60 years, I'll be dead.
Okay.
So what is my hope for eternal life?
Okay, the hope for eternal life is the second argument that I wanted to, the second presumption that I made was that mathematics is successful in describing real properties of the universe, which means, like the mathematicians say, if the universe extends indefinitely into the future, give it enough time, everything will happen again, and it'll happen again an infinite number of times. Am I wrong about that?
Nope. The fact that something happens repeatedly doesn't make it the same. So, for example, here's a 20-sided die, and if I roll it about 1 out of 20 times, it will come up with the number 12, which it just did. If I keep rolling it, it's going to come up with the number 12 over and over again, but that instance of the number 12 is not the same.
Okay.
You can also, look at it this way. I could, Giovanni, let's say the universe is infinite and we'll keep on going and entropy is not an issue. I could set off a sequence of events, counting from 1, 2, 3, 4 to infinity. 1 will never come before 2 ever again.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a dynamic universe. It's a dynamic universe. So, for example, if we just started counting right now, kind of what Eric's talking about, at whatever point in the future, this thing that you would like to pretend is me begins to exist, even though it's not me, there will be a different number on the counter at that point than there is at this point. And at no point in the future will the number 73 ever appear on the timeline again on that particular incremented thing. So there will still be something different about whatever it is that you're trying to say is me, but also it's not me, because my existence requires a continuity of experience. It's like if I took every atom that was in you and took them all apart and managed to find a way to store them for 1,000 years, and then I put all those atoms back together in the same configuration, is that you?
In theory, yes, I think in theory. I know it's impossible to do that.
To whatever extent,
it's too
to
complicated.
whatever extent it could be fairly called you, were you alive for that 1,000 years?
Am I alive for that 1,000 years? Okay, if I understand you, you're saying if we can remake the state of the universe in the exact state that it is right now in the future, I mean every atom, every particle, everything the same configuration, logically that would be me again. No?
So if
I'm
I
talking
take
about the
all the
state of
atoms
the
in your
universe.
body,
Every
if I
atom, every
take all the
particle.
atoms in your, if I take all the atoms in your body and I find a way to store them for 1 billion years, and then after that billion years, I put all of those atoms back together in the exact same pattern that they were in when I took them apart from you, and you want to say that that is you, were you alive for those billion years between when I disassembled you and when I put those things back together?
Okay, I wasn't alive.
Cool. So then
Okay,
that's
I
not
was just.
eternal life. It's not eternal life
Oh,
if there was 1 billion years where you didn't exist.
okay, I can see that.
Now,
But can I make an
there's
argument?
still,
Can I make an
there's
argument against
still,
that?
there's, how can you make an argument against the thing you just agreed to?
Oh no, you're right. You're right. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
No,
So
I wanted to.
let's
I want
hang
to see if
on.
Okay. Okay.
So in 1 billion years, when I take all of those atoms and put them back together, now we have a discussion as to whether or not that is still you. So let's do this a little differently.
Okay.
If I lost all of the atoms that used to be in you, but I got, hey, 1 carbon atom from somewhere else for every carbon atom for you. And so I found different atoms that weren't originally part of you, but the exact same compilation of atoms. And I put those atoms together in the pattern that I took yours apart in. Would that also be you?
Well, if we're talking about fundamental particles, there's no difference between fundamental particles, is there? As long as they're in the same configuration.
I don't know why
can't
you're
see
asking a question. I'm asking you a question. If in 1
okay.
billion years, I don't actually use the actual atoms that came from your body, but I use a separate identical set of atoms, and I create put those together in the pattern that existed when I took them apart from you. Is that
Okay.
you with different atoms?
I think yes.
Okay. So if I have your atoms,
okay,
and a separate set of atoms that didn't come from you, and I put both of those together into the pattern they were in when I took them apart. So I take all the atoms from you, I jot down the pattern, I take those atoms and contain them for 1 billion years. And over that course of 1 billion years, I collect a duplicate set of atoms. And now atom group A are the ones that came from you, and atom group B are the ones that did not come from you. And I put them both together in the exact pattern that those atoms from you came from. So now I have 2 sets of atoms. Are they both you?
That's a good question.
That's why I built up to it. Are they both you? How can that be possible?
I think we can make an argument that there would be no difference.
Really? The instant they're put together, are they standing in different positions in the universe? I mean, they're not occupying the same space, are they?
Because we're separate, we couldn't be in the same position.
And so if 2 things are separate, then they're not identical, correct?
Correct.
So they can't both be you. And if they can't both be you, can either of them be you? I don't know.
Well, I think that if we're talking about 2 different sets of atoms, we're talking about fundamental particles, right?
No,
And,
we're talking about identity from an abstract conversation. The particles, the patterns, none of that fucking matters. We're talking about identity. A thing is what it is, isn't what it's not, and everything is or isn't in the same way at the same time. So it doesn't matter whether we use the Star Trek teleporter scenario, where there's duplicates made because it's focused on the pattern, or if we're talking about the ship of Theseus, where we're constantly replacing parts, and at what point does it stop being the ship of Theseus? There are different answers to these things. The ship of Theseus problem is solved because we change the definition of what the ship of Theseus is with each part we replace. At no point is it identical to the original, but we've just changed what the label is across there. Similarly, I'm not the same set of atoms that I was when I was born. There are more of them, and they are all different. There are no atoms left in my body, my understanding, that existed when I was born. So the definition of what makes me me has changed every instant of my life.
Okay.
And so if you were to take this pattern, take it apart, put it back together at some point in the future, you would be creating essentially a copy of that pattern, but it would not be me because there is no continuity of experience across that. And the only way it becomes me is if we change the definition of me to include that. But because we've come up with a hypothetical where there's the pattern and then there's the mass for the pattern, or the material for the pattern, those are two separate things. And if we can create the same pattern with different material, then the material should be irrelevant and it's the pattern that matters. But if I can take that same material and put it into different patterns, then it seems that it's the material that matters and not the pattern. And so this notion that because the universe will continue on forever, everything will repeat is not only fundamentally false, given what we know about how the universe is trending towards there being no energy left to do any work. So things are going to stop repeating. So that version of the universe is somebody just said I'm not a Trekkie when I've seen every episode of all of them because I said it's a teleporter instead of transporter. Sorry that in the heat of the show I used a word for this brilliant fucking analogy that you tried to suggest I'm not a fucking Trekkie. When I've done entire shows on how bad actually Darmok and Gelada Tenebra is when you actually get down to it, despite the fact that it's brilliant for a little while. So good job, Daniel. But at the end of the day, no, even if the universe is eternal and things repeat in some context, that doesn't mean it repeated me. And it does not mean that the thing that it repeated that looks and appears to be me is in fact me. Those are different things. So this is about how we label and determine identity.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. I can see where the argument gets flawed there. Yeah. Yeah, I was more thinking through the assumption that if the state of the universe would repeat itself in the exact same state, my assumption was that my whatever makes my conscious is going to repeat itself also. So, given the state of the universe is exactly the same, I was under the assumption that I would repeat myself also. But I guess I can see where that's flawed there. Yeah.
There's no reason to think. I saw that, Matt, when the precept called in. Nice. There's no reason to think that just because certain patterns might repeat, that it is also the case that certain patterns will repeat and the entire pattern will repeat. Because much like what's his name? The tilings that don't repeat. Penrose, just like Penrose tilings. There's no reason to think, yeah, the universe could be viewed as a Penrose tiling that while it goes on forever, it's not going to repeat.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
Sweet.
Yeah, like I said, I was working under a false assumption then that if the state of the universe was the same, exactly the same, every atom, every quark in the same place, they bump the same way, that the state of the universe that causes my conscious today would repeat itself someday. My conscious would come into existence again. But I can see where that's flawed, yeah.
It's amazing what people, it's just, sorry, I got distracted by chat again, but thanks, Giovanni.
Yep, thanks.
It's funny because somebody's like, oh, he's not a Trekkie because I misspoke in the heat of this. You go ahead and create your live and see your show live and see how many times you misspeak. But somebody else was like, Matt clearly hasn't done enough psychedelics. Oh, yes, I fucking have. Well, I guess technically it's indeterminate as to whether or not I've done enough because I haven't decided when or if I'm going to be doing them again. Maybe I have done enough and I don't ever do them again. Maybe I haven't done enough and I will do some more in the future. But at the end of the day, yeah, you're wrong.
Maybe you just try to do infinite amounts of psychedelics.
Yeah.
Because how would you ever know if you did enough unless you do it all?
Maybe we're all on psychedelics all the time. And you have no way of proving that you're not.
Maybe mankind is like a super duper rational species, but for some reason, nitrogen and oxygen just messes it all up, and we're just hopeless.
If we just reduce the nitrogen amount, we wouldn't all be sitting around laughing like we're on laughing gas. Imagine that.
Whenever somebody chokes to death, right before they asphyxiate, they just have this moment of clarity, like, "Oh, unfortunately, you're gone."
All I need to do was open a fucking window. Oh,
anyway, apologies that
I'm outside.
Apologies that I left for a moment. I actually beamed away. I was gone for that moment, and now that I'm back, I'm actually a clone of the original.
How do we
Eric,
know
so.
it? Yeah, I was like, yeah. That's the other thing is, there's lots of these. I love these. Some of these little thought experiments are kind of fun, and for the people who aren't familiar with them, I get it. Not everybody's been exposed to everything, but there are some standard ones. The ship of Theseus is a great example of how are we going to determine the identity of something or how to categorize something. There's also the problem of hard solipsism. For example, and this is a weird, legitimate problem for a God. So we have breaks in our continuity of conscious experience. We probably don't have breaks in our experience while we're alive. It's just there are different types of experience. So, for example, when I go to sleep, it's for me, because I don't tend to remember dreams, even though I know that I have them on occasion, but by and large, I rarely remember dreams. For me, when I go to sleep and I wake up, it's kind of like, sleep, those little slices of death, how I loathe thee. I don't mind it as much, but it doesn't make any sense because I am conscious. And then there's some period of time where I'm not. And then I wake up and I'm conscious again. Now, we can position people and scientific equipment all around my room to measure and monitor to make sure that I stay alive, and we can check my subconscious, everything else, and that my body hasn't been abducted by aliens and replaced with a clone. We can monitor that. What we can't monitor is whether or not the aliens are able to remove my body and replace it with a clone in a way we can't detect, something that would be roughly the equivalent of magic or godlike powers, whatever. And so every day you wake up, what would it be like to have to prove that you're the same person you were yesterday when already we know you're not? Like, we know on some level you're not, but you're essentially the same person as yesterday. But what if you had to prove it? Prove you're not a clone. I don't know how to do that. There doesn't seem to be a way to do it. Just like there's no seeming solution to the problem of hard solipsism. I don't know how to prove that the reality I experience is in fact the one true real reality. I'm just fine with assuming it is, and it would seem incredibly arrogant for me to assume it's not, and that I'm the only person that's real. You're all figments of my imagination, or you're all figments that were created by somebody else that's pumping it in. There's tons of thought experiments like this, and they're useful in helping figure out how to think about things and how to categorize things. But I think they're most useful as a cautionary tale of not to assert. It's the reason that science doesn't make proclamations of truth or certainty, and instead describes things as best it can. Because I don't think there's any path to absolute certainty, and I don't think there are absolute answers that we have access to for a lot of the questions that we're going to ask. And yet at the end of the day, I don't spend any significant part of my time going, am I real? Am I the same Matt that was here yesterday? And it's in part because until there's a reason to think that's not the case, and until somebody gives me a way that I can do something about it, it seems to be a waste of time suspend any concern. I mean, it's like I don't wake up when I go to bed. Now that I'm an adult, I don't wonder if there's monsters under my bed. It never occurs to me. I don't care what horror movie I watch. Actually, horror movies don't really scare me anymore. But at no point when I go to bed am I going, "Ooh, is there a monster under my bed?" And yet we live in a world where a significant portion of the population thinks that there are monsters under the bed, not in the Monsters Inc. sense or in the childish sense, but if you listen to a number of Christians, we are engaged in spiritual warfare, and demons are real, and demons are controlling people and inhabiting people and are there to lead them astray. It's not metaphor. It's actual beings fighting with the God of the cosmos. And those monsters are not just under your bed. They're everywhere. They're in that bottle of alcohol you had, the demon of alcoholism, which my mom said she saw sitting on the shoulder of my grandpa when he was an alcoholic. She walked in and looked at her dad, and there sitting on his shoulder was a demon, the demon of alcoholism. Now, I have no way of, I have no doubt that my mom is convinced that she saw something. I just have no reason to think that she's right about what she saw or her experience or anything else. And when we live in a world where people are thinking that, start wondering, how do you even know you're you from yesterday? And you're sitting here thinking, oh, there's demons. How do you know the demons didn't replace you or yank your soul out or manipulate your brain? How do you know that you're not being sent strong delusions? There's a number of these thought experiments like the 5-minute universe or the new evil demon, where you are just constantly being fed a reality and deceived. And really you're a brain in a vat, or you're in the matrix or whatever else. They're cool thought experiments, but they are there, if for nothing else, to reduce your confidence in what you perceive the world to be, because your confidence should be lowered. Almost, except for some people who are just like the conspiracy theorists that reject everything, like there is no truth. Those people should boost their confidence a little bit, but not in that. They should boost their confidence in the reality that they experience. But
amen.
Yes. And in the Star Trek universe, every time you step into the transporter, you commit suicide. Unless there's a transporter failure that actually just sends your pattern but keeps you here, in which case you didn't die. And the proof of that is because that can happen, and there would be two yous. They're not two yous. There's you and a copy of you, which means every time you step into a transporter, it basically takes notes on who you are, destroys you, sends the notes to someplace else, and builds another copy of you out of other material from those notes. Transporters are suicide.
It gets even worse than that too, because there's very little consistency, like general consistency with the way transporters work in Star Trek. But really, episode to episode, they will fudge the details about it to make it work better for the story. So you will have transporters where you're conscious throughout the entire experience,
and
you'll have transporters where talking, and interact with others in the matter stream. You'll have in the case where Scotty was in a transporter buffer for 80 years, he wasn't conscious during all of that. Like, can you imagine if he was? He would have come out a raving lunatic. There's transporters that certain conditions will actually duplicate you. It's like, okay, where did the energy for that come from and all that? And then even worse, in the new Picard series, which I don't like very much, but there's a thing in it where they needed the transporter to do something. So they came up with the excuse that, okay, the human, the atomic makeup of a human body is just too much information, but transporter scientists notices commonalities like copy and pasted genetic code and things like that. So when you're beamed away, the transporter actually doesn't care about all of you. It gets most of you, and then it puts those commonalities into place at the destination. So you're actually getting like cut up and reapplied with some generic parts when you reappear. And they use that as a plot device in the 3rd season. So transporter conversations are extremely fun. I've had numerous of them, but just don't rely on even the source material to be doctrine on it, because there's so many inconsistencies there. So when you're having a transporter conversation, establish the rules with your interlocutor and say, these are the rules of transporter. We're not going to appeal any esoteric episodes. We just need like these general rules, or else you're not going to get anywhere. Good stuff.
Sudro tried to point out that they actually send the matter, because I was like, oh, they just send the pattern. That depends on the writers and the episode. Sometimes there's a matter stream. I will acknowledge that they've talked about the matter stream before. But there are scenarios where they couldn't actually send the matter as a physics thing, but also when the story changes.
When somebody goes into the transporter and they don't come out, like their pattern degrades to a point where they can't be rematerialized, where does that energy go? Like, well, good energy. Put it into the warp engines. I don't know. It's like, don't let it go to waste. You just became warp fuel. That's scary.
I'm pretty sure. So Arden had already closed the lines because we weren't getting another theist. So this is the final call for today. Chris, an atheist from Minnesota, looks like. Burns or him. Hey, how you doing? And what's your question or thing that we can help with?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Just to keep in line here, Dillahunty, snakes under the bed, his eyes unfurled. So,
okay.
I was just giving some Darmok and Jalad throwdown. Great conversations, and could way go into the Roddenberryism as a political concept, but I just recently had I'm a atheist. I want to say agnostic, but actually I've read the Nag Hammadi, so I like Gnosticism. Yep.
Chris, can you just back off from the mic a little bit? We're kind of peaking and
you're popping a lot,
scratching. So.
Yeah, hang on. I got my headphones on.
So one more time.
That's much better.
Get it sorted. Once you get it sorted, kind of back up a sentence or two, because I lost part of what you're saying about Gnosticism. Hello?
You might have muted yourself playing with your microphone.
You might have to tap your phone to wake it up. I see you're on the web client. If you're on your phone, you're going to want to tap it and then tap the browser to wake it back up.
Hello?
Yes, you're back.
There you are.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Sorry about that. Had a lot of issues earlier. So, anyway, I'm an atheist because no proof has been given empirically, but I really like the Nag Hammadi as something to read, so it's good mythology. So I call myself a Gnostic. Recently, I had an experience which raised a bunch of...
I just don't understand. You're an atheist, but you're Gnostic. What is it that you know?
Good question. I believe that any knowledge is going to be a personal revelation. So, and that's how I take Gnosticism to be is an entirely personal process. Totally an atheist, and I'm also a Jungian.
Totally an atheist. Wow, I'm so completely confused. Nothing you say makes any sense to me. And I think you've shut your phone off again.
Sorry about that.
There we go.
You got me? Yeah. So I have to say, I guess I'm an atheist agnostic, but as someone who's done a lot of research, including reading the Nag Hammadi, and someone who's very interested in Jungian psychology, I like to be an informed person. I've actually heard very little, after listening a long time, I've heard very little reference to the things which were politically omitted from the Bible coming from Christians. who call the show, like the Nag Hammadi. I recently had an experience which raised goosebumps, and it got me really like, whoa, wait a minute, is there something going on here? But I've
Your phone has gone to sleep again.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, dudes. Sorry, dudes. I appreciate getting on the phone on the show, and I've had technical difficulties the whole time. I don't know. I guess I recently had a moment experience which I thought was spiritual, but I had after looking at some looking into synchronicity from a Jungian perspective, came to appreciate it as non-metaphysical or non-supernatural. But I'm wondering if there are people who have experiences which they claim to be spiritual are just synchronistic. Hello?
Nothing you say resonates in my brain is making any sense. Nothing about the Nag Hammadi
Okay.
library, nothing about Gnosticism or agnosticism, which you seem to have flipped back and forth on. Nothing about Jungian synchronicity. I don't know what your question is, or, I mean, you're like, oh, you had an experience that you might have thought was spiritual, but then decided it wasn't spiritual. And so you're wondering if other people called things spiritual when they weren't.
Yeah, something like that. And I apologize for being all over the place.
I'm just trying to get the concepts, because so why is the Nag Hammadi library relevant? Because all that is basically a collection of texts, some of which are tied to Gnostic views on Judaism, etc., and others aren't. I don't know what.
Well, I mean, again, I'm not advocating for any theistic perspective, so please understand that. I've had no proof and can give you no empirical evidence that there is anything other than our empirical reality. But I keep wanting to, for some reason. I listen to the show a lot, and I keep wanting to come at with
Your phone has gone to sleep again.
That's weird.
It's not weird. We've described it and explained the problem multiple times. You are on your cell phone and you are using the web app for Call-In Studio to call in. And because it's in a browser, when you put your phone up to your ear, your phone goes into a sleep down mode. And so the browser basically gets disconnected from your microphone. So you have to keep your phone awake. We've explained it 50 times.
Gotcha. I'm doing that. So anyway, I'd love to be able to, I keep wanting to, I feel somehow oddly compelled to come in and try to give some sort of empirical proof of something other than atheism, and I can't. And I'm well versed in many, many different religions and spiritualities. I did recently have a moment when something happened which just blew me away. An emotional reoccurrence which spanned a decade, 10 years. And all of a sudden, one end and the other end were closed, and it was goosebumps. And I was like, what the heck is this? And really came to some sort of kind of more of a Jungian perspective on it, in that I was prepared for something crazy to happen, and something crazy happened, and it was just coincidence. Although I do think there's something in human psyche which...
Are you like a Jordan Peterson fan?
No, absolutely not. That's... No. No.
Because
You know,
I haven't spent this much time listening to someone talk about Jungian archetypes without making sense since I sat down with Jordan Peterson. So I thought I'd ask.
Okay. Well, yeah, no, totally not. I do think there is something there, but again, there's only a tiny amount of empirical evidence which hints at a collective unconscious. I guess what I'm trying to say is that there are I'm just trying to represent a feeling of someone who is an atheist who is still seeking and is open, but nothing's come along. So I guess that's about it.
So wait, so you're an atheist who is still looking around at religions and not finding anything, and you called in to tell us that?
Yeah, although I did have a moment recently, and I guess maybe.
What was the moment?
I've without going into a lot of details, a bunch of legal stuff, but I had a coincidence that was involved in the very beginning of it, and then 10 years later, out of nowhere, same coincidence occurred, and so it was unsettling. And the people who know me and have listened to the story of it, and they get goosebumps when it happens. And so
Chris,
I guess,
literally. Yeah, go ahead, Eric, because I'm at my
Chris,
wit's end asking for an example and getting in just nebulous sentences of nothingness.
Yeah, Chris, you're very anomalous, nebulous. The way Matt said it, it's really hard to latch on to anything solid to talk about. People win the lottery multiple times in their lifetime. Highly, highly, highly unlikely that to happen twice to a single person, but some people have had it happen multiple times. So that doesn't mean anything. Coincidences occur. We latch onto things due to either emotions or humans as pattern seekers. We tend to find patterns where there's not really any patterns to begin with. So that's why it's important. You said to yourself, you're an agnostic atheist. You like the Gnostic philosophy. You like these religious texts. You've had experiences in your life that's caused you to raise your eyebrow at it, and that's fine. But just life is a messy experience, and you're not going to see 100% consistency with these things, especially when emotions are involved. So, and you have a desire to want to find stuff in there, and that's fine. That's the human condition. But as you said, you're an agnostic, you're an atheist. You are trying to keep your checks and balances in place for those things, and that's where you should stay until you have sufficient evidence to build a case that you can test and falsify that anything else other than what we experience in reality is actually real. Like, you're swimming around a whole lot of stuff, and you're basically saying, I'm where you are, but I have some emotions involved. And yeah, sure, we are where we are. We have emotions involved as well. We're pretty much the same, but you're swimming around quite a lot, and it's really hard to latch on to anything here. Is there a specific thrust of what you're trying to say with this call here?
Well, I appreciate that's a good encapsulation where I'm coming from. I guess if I could be, kind of speaking to theists who are caught up in applying their emotions, to their psychological, their questioning life as psychologically. I guess that's what I'm trying to provide an example of. I'm somebody who's an atheist whose emotions have caused them to have questions and maybe even look for external supernatural solutions. And I guess that I'm just calm about that, really.
Okay.
I mean, I could provide details to this crazy Goosebumps event, but it's really just, I did a little thinking about it and a little reading and found out that, it's, that, our brains are structured to find patterns, and we all share a similar brain structure. So we're going to find similar patterns, and supernatural responses are going to, provide convenient excuses for that. Sorry to, be like a shotgun here about
That's fine.
stuff.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree with those statements. We can tend to latch on to explanations, even if they're bad, just because explanation is more comforting than no explanation. So sure.
It still doesn't stop me wanting to have something so simple and sweet as some sort of supernatural solution.
What is simple and sweet?
Well, that's why I'm saying I'm a proponent of ID, but the I is ironic. I think irony is a greater force in the universe than intelligence, if you ask me.
Okay. You're a proponent of ironic design, or did you just think you could put two letters together? And I think, honestly, Chris, you are a thinker in search of a thought.
Okay. Yes, I am actually a proponent of ironic design, but because I've found that to be more empirical than intelligent design coming from Atheists.
Yeah, you know what else is more empirical than intelligent design? Not non-design. So you don't just have to keep their initials and sub in something so you can make a clever statement that's actually not accurate. You could just say, hey, the appearance of design doesn't actually demonstrate design, intelligent, ironic, or imbecilic.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yep. No,
Yeah,
I absolutely
keep going with guys. I love alliteration. I like the thing, but it's like you called in and you're like, oh, I'm an unwilling atheist Gnostic. And then 5 minutes into the discussion, you're now an unwilling atheist agnostic. And then when you recently had a goosebumps moment that evidently impressed you and impressed other people, but when we ask you what it is, we get absolutely nothing of any substance to critique or evaluate at all. And
I can be more specific.
You want to talk about reading the Nagamati library? I'm pretty sure that there's nothing in the Nagamati library that has any bearing or relevance on the goosebumps thing that you had, right?
Well, no, but there is one element of the Nagamati which, okay, yeah, there is one element of the Nagamati which I do feel has some seeming correlation or pseudo correlation with modern science, and that's the pleroma. But in general, it's all mythology, of course. I can be more specific. I'd love to be more specific about the experience I had, but it involves legal matters, and I really am hesitant to get too much into it. Other than there was a person who was day one when I was incarcerated was in the jail with me, and then 10 years later, when I was released from incarceration, I walked out, and there they are, the same person. So that it was obviously coincidence, but sure raised some goosebumps.
So, okay, we're closer to something I can assess. So you went to jail, or I guess prison, for 10 years. I don't think you go to jail for 10 years, do you?
Nope, incarceration.
Okay, so you're incarcerated for 10 years, and on the day that you go in, there's somebody, and on the day you come out, the same somebody is there. Who are they and where are they in these two scenarios? Because if it's like, hey, on the day they put me in there, this is the guy who worked the button for the main gate of the prison, and 10 years later, it's the same guy. That's not even a coincidence. That's just his fucking job. So what context are we talking about here?
For sure. This person, who was known to me, by the way, happened to be in the same holding room as I was getting booked into a jail. And then as I was being released, they were in, they were there to be, to see their probation officer 10 years later, day to day, day one, day zero. And
how many times did they come visit their parole officer? Why is this hard? Did your phone go to fucking sleep again?
So sorry. So sorry.
How frequently?
I'm
how frequently did they come check in with their parole officer?
Oh no! You know what? I have no idea really, because 10 years passed.
Do you have a parole officer?
No, no longer.
Okay. When you did, how frequently did you have to check in with your parole officer? Why is it like fucking pulling teeth just to get a couple details?
Oh no, sorry, Matt. I fully understand that this is coincidental.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay.
I'm done, Chris. I'm done
Yeah.
being told that you fully understand, you fully understand, you fully understand, instead of answering the questions. I can take no more of it today. I've reached my limit.
Oh,
Yeah, why even bring it up
if you fully understood, I wouldn't need to be asking questions to try and get clarity on it. But since you fully understand, you don't need anything else from us. Thanks for calling.
Yeah. And by your own admission, if it's just coincidental, why even bring it up? It's just coincidental.
Well,
That was a waste of time.
because it was significant that I hadn't seen that person for 10 years and they were there.
Weren't you fucking incarcerated for 10 years? What were your opportunities to see somebody over the 10 years you were in? Jesus Christ. This is ridiculous. Hey, I was incarcerated for 10 years and then I saw somebody that I hadn't seen in 10 years. I bet there's a lot of people you hadn't seen in 10 years, right?
Okay, guys, you know what? I'm sorry. Don't mean to piss anyone off. I'm not trying to get, I'm not trying to, raise the hackles to this level. Sorry.
Maybe you should answer some fucking questions then. You called.
Okay.
I'm trying to get some understanding on what you're saying. And instead, it's like I'm pulling teeth. But then when I start to make some fucking progress on actually getting answers, then you tell me you completely understand.
Would you please give me the understanding that I'm trying to not divulge a lot of information because of personal reasons, and also
people who have secrets. If you have a secret coincidence that you don't want to share, it's completely fucking useless to the show, isn't it? Because we can't evaluate secrets unless we know them.
Okay. Well, so I guess I better better shut up.
What's pleroma?
Oh, pleroma. Pleroma.
I know what it is.
Yeah. So I think there's a little bit of ontological similarity between pleroma and entanglement from a quantum mechanics perspective, actually.
Oh my God. Goodbye, Chris. Goodbye. No. I'm not going down this road at all. So pleroma is essentially the Gnostic concept of heaven. And Chris has been sitting, he hung up, by the way. I didn't hang up on him.
No, I did that because it's past 5 and I have to produce the late show and I was sick of going on the merry-go-round.
Oh, okay. Well, in any case, I was about to. So Chris is very proud of the fact that he's read the Nag Hammadi library and has discovered a concept in there where the Gnostics have a concept of heaven. And he thinks that it's somehow tied to entanglement, which I will bet all the money in my wallet Chris doesn't have a good understanding of at all. But even if it did, Chris's aha moment, I guarantee you, is that he's impressed that these Gnostic authors seem to have an understanding of an entanglement concept that the rest of humanity didn't discover for centuries afterwards. And the answer is, you're reading into it. Period. You are taking what you know and understand, and a lot of what you clearly don't know and understand, and injecting it in there because you are on a search for significance. You had plenty of time on your hand and were bored and not clearly informed on everything, and you wanted to find significance, and so you did. If you go looking for significance, you will find it. You can spin significance out of anything. I wish, I don't know, can I go to Google and just do a random search to pull up any page? I don't want to put any, it'd be fun for me to pull up a random web page that I've never read or anything else and start to read it to see if I can find significance. I've done that before with the Bible. I've just randomly clicked over here, boom, boom, boom. Here we go in my Bible app that's open. I went to Jonah chapter 3. And the word of the Lord came unto Jonah the second time, saying, Arise, go into Nineveh, that great city, and preach it to the preaching that I bid thee. So Jonah rose, went to the Nineveh according to the Lord. Now Nineveh was, this is really cool because this is a story that atheists use all the time. And yet I randomly clicked on an application over here that has all the chapters, verses, and books in the Bible. And this, I happened to open to one that's about Nineveh and a prophecy about God changing his mind. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
But also,
I'm sure,
you could pick up.
I'm sure that you and I could both go to random Bible verses and then draw all kinds of connections. Like you go to a random one, I go to a random one. We can talk about it for an hour, draw all kinds of random connections. We do that Wikipedia articles. Humans are pattern seekers. That doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean there's actually a pattern there.
If you have 2 sticks, they won't stand up. But if you have 3 sticks, you actually get a stable structure. So there we are. There's the physics of a 3-footed stool being a stable structure. And that's also Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Plus, my body is divided into head, torso, and lower body. Oh, and this finger, that's the Trinity. There's 3 joints on that finger. There's the finger, the back of my hand, and the wrist. That is all there that goes into hand motion. That's a Trinity. Mm-hmm. There's my hand, my forearm, and my upper arm. That's a Trinity. You just, if you're doing it, you can find Trinities everywhere. And that speaks to the truth of God. And by the way, if you don't like Trinities, you can just divide things into 2s. I've got my upper body and my lower body. I've got my left side and my right side, my left eye, my right eye, my left nostril, my right nostril. Does that mean that God is 2? You can, and you can do it with 1, and you can do it with 4 and 73. And, oh my gosh, there's a prime number. It must be important. And this is why not you people, but this is why some people look for the golden ratio and, 1.618, blah, 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 ad nauseum, and looking for patterns and secrets. And this is exactly the type of thing that the Gnostics were doing. The Gnostics weren't talking about knowledge in the sense of, hey, I did an experiment and got this result, and now I have knowledge of how this works. They're talking about secret knowledge. They're talking about hidden knowledge. They're talking about the knowledge of the divine and the supernatural and the spirit. It is the entire purpose of it. And so if you go looking for meaning, you're going to find it. That's the reason there are over 1,000 denominations of Christianity alone, because people found different meaning in the same texts. There's a reason why the Gnostics feel like they stumbled upon secret knowledge, and why they have a different Gospel of Thomas and a separate long version for Mark. The issue here, and it gets back to the questions that we frequently ask on the show, and we asked several times of one of the earlier callers, is this. It's fine for you to say you believe something, X, anything. But why you believe it is important. And if you don't have a way to show how you distinguished your belief being true versus your belief being false, you have nothing. That's just like your opinion, dude. That's all you've got. And if we're going to try to figure out how the world works, we can't just go by opinion, which is why we rely on scientific processes and logical reasoning, so that we don't engage in fallacies. So that when somebody says, hey, what method do you have for investigating beyond space-time in order to determine that there's a being there? The one and only correct answer right now is that we do not have any way to investigate beyond space and time. We just don't. And that's unfortunate for the people who are convinced that there's something beyond space and time. It's also, as a matter of logic, definitionally impossible for something to exist outside of time, because existence requires time. If something exists for no time, that is identical to it not existing. Now, it may not exist within our local presentation of space and time. Maybe there's a multiverse with lots of different space times. And maybe there's a meta space time. And maybe there's a God in that meta space time. But if you don't have any way to investigate it and get supporting evidence and come up with a model that is falsifiable, you have nothing. And here's why that's important. It's not just, boom, 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 let me teach you the basics of epistemology. This is why it's important. For those of you who believe there's a God, you're either claiming to detect the undetectable, or you're claiming that you've detected the detectable. If it is detectable, you can show us how. The methods and mechanisms that led you to your supposedly reasonable conclusion should be available to all of us. And if in fact you're right about a God, and as I said earlier, the evidence points clearly in that direction, where all of us could point and say, that's where the kid is hiding as he stands behind the rocking chair, holding onto the slats, and he can't see you, so he thinks you can't see them. That's what that God would be like. A toddler foolishly hiding where all of us can see. That's the God you're advocating for. And if you're not, then you're advocating for a God that is non-existent, unreal, non-participatory, and you're claiming to detect the undetectable, or worse, that which doesn't exist. We're going to keep doing the shows. As a matter of fact, there'll be another episode of the Sunday Show a little later on tonight. Arden, who's on? Is it Seth and
Eve?
Seth and Eve. So way better than me. I wish Eric could be on with them so they didn't have to suffer sitting here with me. But Seth and Eve will be on. And hopefully, when you theists call in, you'll actually be able to say, here's why I believe, and here's why I think other people should believe. Here's my method and mechanism for identifying beyond space-time. Here's my method and mechanism for identifying, confirming creation by an intelligent designer. Here's my method and mechanism for knowing that while you sit there as an atheist with no explanation for the universe, I have the one true correct explanation. Tune in tonight for that show and all the others here on the line, patreon.com/calltheline. Thank you.